If you are brand new to DaVinci Resolve, this video is for you. Even if you've been around Resolve for a little while, there is a ton that you can learn from this crash course. My name's Jason Yadlovsky. I'm a certified Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve trainer, and today I'm going to just walk you through the ins and outs of Resolve. I'm going to explain how we get things set up, how we can edit our projects, do a little color grading, fusion, export our projects, pretty much start to finish. I'm going to give you so much information that you're going to have to come back and check out all the things that are bookmarked throughout this video. That said, it's going to be a long crash course here. I'm going to timestamp everything down below so you can just jump around to the parts that you need. But if you have any questions about anything that you see in this video, feel free to drop a comment below. I'm pretty good at getting back to everybody, and I'm going to do my best to answer the questions that you have. So let's just get started here and learn how to use DaVinci Resolve 19 together. Let's go. So we're in DaVinci Resolve 19 here, and I'm going to assume that you've already gone ahead, you've already installed DaVinci Resolve, and maybe you've even created your first project library or your first project database, which is where all of your projects live. Now, Resolve does work a little bit differently than some other programs that you may have used, so we're going to get into talking about all that so you can kind of get an understanding of where things are, how the projects are set up, where the project file lives, and how that differs from where you can keep your media. But to get started here, when you open Resolve, you might see a window that looks like this, and this is called the Project Manager. And this is going to be where we find all of our project files. Now, this is not the media files. This is just the DaVinci Resolve file that tells the project in DaVinci Resolve where to find all of your media and how to put everything together in your timeline and in your DaVinci Resolve project. Now, if you have no projects in here already, you can come down and open a new project or start a new project by clicking New Project right here at the bottom right of the screen. And also, it's important to note that in the Project Manager here, up by the word Projects, if we click on this little icon right here, it's actually going to show us our different databases or our different project libraries. So I've created a brand new project library here for DaVinci Resolve 19 Crash Course, which is what this is. But I do have other items here or other project libraries. For example, all of my projects are generally in the local database right here. Now, when it comes to your project library, you want to keep it on your internal hard drive because that's going to give you the best results for working in your projects and stuff. If it's on an external drive, sometimes it could be a little sluggish and it's just not recommended. So you can see here, I've got all my projects, and you can have hundreds of projects in here, and this database is not a big file because it does not include your media. So in my new database here, I'm just going to go ahead and open up a new untitled project, and I'm going to say open. So if you're just getting started in Resolve, you're going to notice there's a lot going on here. So let's take a high-level view of what Resolve has and kind of how we navigate around DaVinci Resolve. So Resolve is set up in different pages or different tabs. And real quick, if your screen doesn't look like this for some reason, let's all come up to Workspace and come down to Reset UI Layout just to make sure we're all looking at the same thing. So now we should all see the exact same thing on our screen. Now, looking across the bottom of the screen here, we've got the different tabs that we're able to work in DaVinci Resolve. The first tab here is our media tab. This allows us to look for media for our projects. It allows us to do different things with our media. We can look at metadata and do a whole host of different kinds of things to our media in the media pool here. And this page is dedicated specifically for the media. The next tab or page we have down here is the cut page. Now, this is like a simplified editor that the goal of this page is to help you edit through your videos quickly. There are a ton of tools in here, pretty much everything you need to make a video from start to finish for the most part. It allows you to go through a lot of footage quickly. In all honesty, I don't use the cut tab that much because there are some features that we need to jump into the next tab, which is the edit tab right here. So the cut tab, while it does offer some great flexibility and great features, for me and the work that I do, I find that the edit tab is the place where I want to do all of my editing for my videos. It offers all of the tools that I'm going to need, has everything that, I might even want to use right here in the edit tab. So the cut tab is great. In this video, we're going to be focusing on the edit tab just because I think that's a better place for you to start as a beginner than in the cut tab. And the edit tab is just going to give you access to everything anyway. You won't have to jump back and forth. And in the edit tab here, you can work with your media. We've got effects. We can create a sound library. We can work with an index in here. We've got our mixer, our metadata, inspector, and we're going to talk about all this stuff as we get moving a little more into the project here. But just know that in the edit page, this is where we're going to be spending the majority of our time in this class, and this is where I would recommend that you do most of your project. The next page or tab down here is Fusion, and this is going to allow you to create cool motion graphics and visual effects. It's a little more advanced. We may do some basic things in here, but it can get real deep real quick, and you're going to want to take some time after you understand the basics of Resolve to jump in there and play with Fusion because it's really awesome and you can do some really cool stuff in there. The next tab we have here is the Color tab, and this is where you're going to do all of the color grading for all of your footage. So you'll see once we create our timeline and we've got our clips in there, we'll see our clips in here. We can go through, change the colors, color grade, apply looks, do all kinds of fun and fancy things when it comes to color grading our clips in our film. The next tab we have down here is Fairlight, and Fairlight is your audio tab. It's going to allow you to do any kind of audio thing that you want to do when it comes to your videos, your music, whatever it might be. I'm a DaVinci Resolve audio guy. I love audio. You'll see I've got tons of audio videos here on YouTube that you can check out on how to make your audio sound better. And audio is a super important part of the process when it comes to making your videos, because if we can't hear you and you can't understand what the people are saying, the audio is not crisp, it's not clear, the rest of your video doesn't even matter. Nobody's going to be watching if we're being honest, right? So I'm a big proponent of great audio, and we're going to jump into Fairlight and touch on some of the things that you can use in the audio tab here in Fairlight that can just help take your audio to that next level. And the final tab we have down here is the Dliver tab, and this is where you're going to set up your render settings and render out your final video. So we'll touch on that towards the end of this course as well. And just to cover the two other items here in our toolbar at the bottom here, we have this house icon, which is actually our project manager. So if I click on that, that's going to bring up our project manager that we were looking at when we first got started. You can view this different ways. Once we add some media to our project, you'll see little thumbnails of the footage that's in your project. You can change it to a list view if you want. And again, you can see your different databases by clicking this little icon right here. So if you wanted to switch projects, you can do that right here in the project manager. For now, I'm just going to hit close. And the little gear icon, the little cog down here at the bottom, if you click on that, that is going to be your project settings. And for now, we're just going to leave these at the default settings. We're going to jump in here and kind of go over this a little more in detail later. But first, I just want to get you started editing so you can start creating here in Resolve. And then we'll get into some more of the finer details of things like the project settings and your DaVinci Resolve preferences. So I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel on our project settings. As we get started here in DaVinci Resolve, I'm going to show you the ins and outs of how to create your first project. And we're going to be using some footage that comes from my audio course, Audio Essentials for Video Editors in DaVinci Resolve, where we're going to create a mini documentary. And all these files are part of that course. So after you watch this video, if you decide you want to learn audio in depth and you want a one-stop shop, you can check out my audio course, and you can also pick up all of these files. Now, if you don't want to pick up my audio course and use the same files to follow along with us here today, perfectly fine. I have other files on my Shopify that you can go download for free, create your first project. And Blackmagic Design actually has a ton of great stuff. You can go download free footage from them through their training guides and use that footage to follow along with and do the same things that we're going to do in this video. So you've got lots of options. You can pick up my audio course and use the exact same footage we're using here today, or you can get some free footage either from my website, from Blackmagic Design, or maybe you've got your own footage. That works out perfectly fine too. So let's just jump in Resolve and start editing. So the first thing to know when it comes to working with your project here in Resolve is that your media can live wherever you want it to. Typically, I have my media on an external hard drive, and the projects all live within the DaVinci Resolve project database. Now, the project file itself is not a big file, and I know the database kind of throws off some people sometimes because they're used to putting your project file in your project directory on your hard drive. So DaVinci Resolve works a little different in a whole bunch of different areas. So the learning curve is steep, but just keep looking at it, keep learning it, and eventually it's going to click and make sense for you. But just know up front that Resolve does work a little bit differently in some areas than other editors you might be more familiar with. It's not a bad thing, it's just different, and it's going to take you some time to learn the process and understand it. So don't get frustrated, keep working at it, and you're going to get there and be able to understand everything. Now, before I even get started here, there's one thing that I would recommend that you turn on and leave this on, and that is live save and backups. Now, the reason that I recommend this is because you don't want to lose any work, right? And we've all had programs crash or our computer goes down or something, and we don't want to lose any work. So let's take a look at a couple settings real quick to make sure we don't lose any of the work that we do right from the beginning here. So come on up to your DaVinci Resolve menu at the top, come down to Preferences, then come over to the User section right here, and Project Load and Save. And under Save Settings here, you want to make sure you have Live Save turned on, Project Backups turned on, and Timeline Backups turned on. And then you can set how often you want these things to save. So perform backups every 3 minutes in this case, hourly backups for the past 10 hours, and daily backups for the past 15 days. And then you can select your backup location right here of where you want these things to be stored. Personally, I use an external hard drive, an SSD drive. It works out great, but you can put these wherever you want them to go. But really important so that you don't lose any work, you're going to have all these changes save automatically with live save, and then you're going to have multiple forms of backups being performed at regular intervals. Just in case something happens, you won't lose anything. So that's really important. So once you make sure those are on, go ahead and hit save. Now in the edit tab here, we need to bring in some media so we can start editing. So when we bring in our media, we can import it a variety of different ways. And in this case, I'm going to show you the easiest way to do it. And in the edit page here, so this icon at the bottom, we want to come to our media pool, open that up. And now in the media pool, we've got a few different sections here. We've got our master bin, which is essentially a folder here in Resolve where we can organize our stuff. And then right here is where the clips would go. So we can add more bins if we want. And this just helps us organize our files here in DaVinci Resolve. So if we added a bin, we can add a new bin if by right clicking and say new bin. And you can call this whatever you want. We're going to call it footage. And now you see we've got the folder here of footage. So I can double click on the folder or click footage right here. And now we're inside that folder. Now the easiest way to bring media into DaVinci Resolve is to just drag and drop in your media files. So in this case, in my Finder here, I've got a bunch of different files here that we're going to be using to create this project. And what you want to do is find the file that's got the frame rate that you want to use for your project, because when you drag and drop that into DaVinci Resolve, it's automatically going to set your project settings for you. So for example, I'm going to click on this one here, and actually I'm going to come up to a talking head shot. So this one right here, and I'm going to click, hold, and drag and drop that right into my media pool. Now when you do that, you're going to get something that says change project frame rate if it doesn't match what's already set in DaVinci Resolve. And I'm going to say, yes, change the project settings for the frame rate. And now the project is set up with the settings it needs to match my clips. So now I can just go and select all of the clips that I want to bring in, select them all at once, drag them and drop them over into my media pool. And now we've got all of my clips right here in the timeline. Now you might notice because we just started with an untitled project, it doesn't have a name. So I'm going to go to File, Save Project. And now I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to call it DaVinci Resolve 19 Crash Course and hit save. Now, if you created a new project and you named it already in your project manager, you're going to be good to go. You won't have to worry about that. So now that we've got some media in our project here, let's take a look at the edit window. And I just want to go over the different parts and pieces of it so you kind of understand where we're going to be looking for things and how it's kind of set up and how it works. So we're just going to run over the whole window real quick here. Now we have our media pool right here, which is where all of your media lives. You've got your effects library right here, which has things like video transitions, audio transitions, titles, different generators, various effects. You have open effects here with all kinds of different built-in effects. And we also have audio effects. So we're going to be using the effects as we move on here, but for now, just know that this is where you can find all of your effects in the edit page. The index here is going to show you your different tracks or markers or things you might mark up on your timeline. The sound library, you're currently not going to have any sound library loaded up, but DaVinci Resolve does have a free sound library that you can go download, and then you can get sound effects for free. I think there's like 500 sound effects or something. So I've got a video on that if you want to know how to grab that. Quick export over here. You can quickly export videos. You've got your mixer right here. So in your mixer, once we create a timeline, we're going to see our audio channels, and we're going to be able to see where our audio levels fall, as well as work with some effects and things like that if we need to. The metadata panel right here is going to give you metadata about your clips. And the inspector here is where we're going to make a whole bunch of changes that you'll see once we create our timeline. Moving down, we've got two viewers right here. We're going to have our source viewer, which will show us items in our media pool. So if I were to click on anything in my media pool, we'll see it here. It's kind of like a preview window. And then my timeline window is going to be on this side. And once I drop some footage into the timeline, you'll see our timeline on this side at all times. If I were just to double click a clip here and we see it in our viewer, below our viewer, we've got several different tools that we can use. We've got different items in here that we can use for our clips. We can look at the audio track. We can look at our source viewer. If you're working with multicam clips, you can see multicam. Over here, we've got a jog wheel that'll allow us to scroll back and forth. We've got our standard, go to first frame, reverse, stop, play, go to the last frame, and loop buttons. We have a match frame button where if we wanted to match a frame in our timeline, we could always click on this button and it's going to show us where that particular clip in the timeline is on our original clip from our media pool. We We can mark in points and out points if we wanted to bring in certain parts of the clip. And we've got the same options over on our timeline viewer. Down here, we've got our timeline, and let's bring in some footage so that we can take a look at some of the other tools that we've got here in the timeline. Now, before we dump our footage into the timeline, for my talking head pieces right here and right here, I've got some good external audio that I recorded. So I want to sync that up before I drop it into the timeline. That way I know I've got my good audio with the clip that I drop in the timeline. Now, there's a few different ways that we can do that. I could come to my media pool, just right-click and say Auto Sync Audio. And then I'll get this window right here. I can select waveform and then just hit sync, and Resolve is automatically going to look through the clips, find the good audio, and sync it up with our video clips that it matches with. Or if you want to make sure you just got a few specific clips, I can select the clips by using my Command or Control key to select the clips. And once I've selected them, then I can right-click, come down to Auto Sync Audio. We're going to get the same message here. I'm going to say waveform and say sync. Resolve's going to do its thing and sync up that audio automatically for us. And just like that, the good audio is synced up. We're good to go. So now I'm going to take this first clip here and I'm just going to drag it and drop it in my timeline. And it's automatically going to create a video track as well as an audio track for me. Now I know that I had two angles with my talking head here, so I'm actually going to grab my second angle, drag that and drop it into the timeline as well. And you can see it's going to create another video track and another audio track for me. Now, let's say maybe you brought in your two clips and they don't line up and you want to sync them up. Resolve can automatically do that for you. In order to do that, you would select both clips, right-click, and choose Auto Align Clips. And Resolve is going to automatically align the clips for you. Now, if you use timecode, you can do it by timecode. I don't. I just use waveforms because I find that that's pretty easy. So I'm going to go ahead and hit waveform and hit sync. Resolve will do its thing, and boom, we've got our two tracks synced up. And if we listen to a little bit of it, recording on C100 Mark II, recording on 5D Mark IV, recording in DaVinci Resolve Audio, sync them up. All right, so that sounds pretty good. Now, when it comes to working with something like an interview like this, where we're cutting back and forth, we could make a multicam clip and make it really easy to just jump back and forth angles. So a lot of times in Resolve, if you're working on something and it seems like it's taking a little longer than maybe it should, there's probably a better way to do it. But for now, we're going to stick with the basics, show you how to do the basics here in Resolve, and you can check out my multicam video for that kind of setup and how to do all that after you learn all the basics here. So now that we've got some footage in our timeline, let's take a look at some of the items that are now available to us with some footage in the timeline. So taking a look at this top toolbar right here, if we take a look at this icon, this is our timeline view options. We've got several different options we can take a look at here. We've got display stacked timelines. So if you have more than one timeline in your project, that'll show them in little tabs so you can easily flip back and forth between them. You can show subtitle tracks if you're using subtitles. You can display your waveforms, which I always recommend. Your thumbnail view. So what does the thumbnail of the video clip in the timeline look like? Right now we have thumb strip. You can do thumbnail, or where you'll just see a thumbnail on either end of the clip, or you can do none. And that's just fine too. If you don't want to see any picture there, that's fine. It'll just be, a solid color clip. In your viewer here, you can change the way the background looks. So if you had a clip that was smaller with nothing behind it, you could show that background either as a checkerboard, as black or gray, depends on what you like to look at. We've got fixed playhead here. So if you like to have your playhead stay in one spot and the footage scroll past it, you can turn this on. Otherwise, the playhead will scroll through the timeline and it'll work kind of in that manner. You can display non-reflected waveforms, display your full waveform, display a waveform border, which is going to show you a little outline on your waveforms. And then right here, you can adjust your video track height like this and your audio track height like that. And now a quick little tip here, if you wanted to adjust your track height by just coming in your timeline, you can hold your shift key and use your middle mouse wheel here and just mouse up or wheel up and wheel down for your video, and same with your audio clips. And while we're talking about navigation in the timeline here, you could also use your control or command key in your middle mouse wheel to scroll left and right. You can also zoom in and out by holding your alt or option key and your middle mouse wheel. It's going to zoom you in and out. And another way to zoom in and out on the timeline is to hold command or control and the plus and minus keys, and that's going to zoom in and out. Now, if you're zoomed into some part of your timeline and you want to see the entire timeline at once, a keyboard shortcut for you there is Shift-Z. So all these keyboard shortcuts and mouse shortcuts are going to just help you navigate around a little bit quicker when it comes to moving around your timeline, and they're important to, eventually learn and use to just help speed everything up a little bit. Moving along through our toolbar here, we've got our selection mode right here. And a lot of times you're just going to use this as the item that you need to select different things in your timeline. We've got our trim edit mode, which allows you to work with your clips in different ways and slip clips. We'll get into that a little bit more as we move ahead here. You've got your dynamic trim mode. You've got your razor blade, which allows you to make a cut. And you can see the keyboard shortcut there is B. The next item we have here is insert clip. So if I want to insert this clip down into the timeline, I can just use the whole clip, or I can press I for an in point and O for an out point. And then I can just say insert clip, and it's going to put it right where my playhead is, just like that. Now I'm going to undo that using Command or Control Z. We have overwrite clip, so we can click that, and it's going to write over top of the clip in the timeline on the track that we have selected here. Or we have replace clip. So if I click that, it's going to replace the entire clip. Next, we've got our snapping icon here, which is like a magnet tool that allows us to snap to, say, the end of the clip. You can see it snaps there right to the end of the clip. So anywhere you've got a cut, Resolve will automatically snap the timeline there to specific points in your timeline. It could be a marker, it could be a cut, or any other element that you have in your timeline. Next, we've got link selection. So this allows us to quickly detach like our audio from our video, for example, because right now if I select one clip, it selects both the audio and the video. And if I move them, they move together. But if I wanted to move just one of those, say just the video, I can uncheck the linked icon here, and then I can just grab the video and move it around. Now you're going to see these little numbers appear here because that's telling me, hey, your clips are out of sync by 51 seconds or 51.22 seconds, right? So Resolve lets you know when things aren't lined up how they should be. So if I move that back, you see once they're synced up, that red number disappears. But for example, maybe you wanted to cut out the video and you just wanted to keep the audio. You could come in here with that link selection off, select your clip, make cuts on just this track or just this video clip, and then keep the audio without affecting it. So that one comes in handy. The next icon here is position lock. You can lock its position so it can't move at all. And you can see our tracks all get locked over here. So that way I can't change anything. I can't move anything. I can't edit anything. And you can use that lock just in case you don't want to mess anything up. Next, we've got markers and flags, and that just allows you to put a marker or flag on the timeline or on a selected clip. So in this case, I had the clip selected and it popped it on right there. If I want to delete it, I can just select it and hit the delete key. If I don't have any clips selected and I hit a flag or a marker, it's going to put it right on the timeline right here. And I use these things to make notes or mark out chapters in my YouTube videos, or a note maybe I need to come back and make some adjustments. I could do that right here. Next, we've got our timeline zoom options. So you can, instead of using the keyboard shortcuts that we talked about a few minutes ago, you can zoom full extent right here. You can zoom into a detailed zoom. You can use a custom zoom. So you don't even have to click on the custom zoom. I can just grab this slider and zoom it in and out to wherever I want. And the last little section here is just the volume within DaVinci Resolve. This doesn't affect our clip volume or our audio clip levels. This just changes the volume inside DaVinci Resolve. So you can adjust it there. You can mute it by clicking on the speaker here. And you can also hit the dim button, which is going to drop it down, I don't know, maybe 40% or something like that. I forget the exact percentage, but it's going to go ahead and drop it down for you there. So those are the primary tools you're going to use here in Resolve to do pretty much everything with your videos. And some of these you're not even going to use that often, right? There's a couple that we're going to use pretty much on a regular basis. The rest you may use here and there. So now just taking a look at our timeline here, we've got a few different things going on. Just run over it real quick. We've got our time code right here. So where we are in our timeline. If I come back to the beginning here, we're all at zeros. And looking at each one of our audio and video tracks, now each one is going to look the same, but we can rename our tracks. We can call this whatever we want. You just double click in there. I'm going to call this angle 2. We can call our track 1 angle 1. And the same with our audio track. We can double click in there and change the name of that. I'm going to call it V1 for vocal 1 or dialogue 1. You could call it D1. So I'll call it V1 and V2. And now for each track, we've got a couple options down here. You've got a lock track where you could lock it, where you can't change it. The next icon we have here is the auto track selector. And when this is turned on, I can move my playhead. And if I make a cut, for example, it's going to cut every single clip in the timeline. However, if I turn off the auto track selector and I make another cut, the track that does not have the auto track selector turned on or has it turned off is not going to get a cut on it. But you can see my other track did. So just undoing that with Command or Control Z real quick. If you want to affect some tracks, but not all of them, you can turn this on and off and, select the tracks that you want. Typically, I'm going to leave it turned on, but there's definitely instances where I want to turn it off. And the last icon here in your video tracks is to enable or disable the video track. You can basically turn the track on or off. Down in our audio tab, we have similar controls. We've got a lock track. We have our auto track selector. And then we've got S, which is solo, which means play only that track or the tracks that have this button turned on. And then you've got the mute button, which is going to mute the track, and you're not going to hear anything coming out of the track when you play through your timeline. The little number 2 up here means that we've got a stereo track. So you can work with a stereo track, a mono track, either one. In my case here, when I recorded my good external audio, I know it was one source. It was one mono track that gets recorded, and it's just put into right and left channels. So this could be a mono track. It's going to sound just the same in my case. In your case, if you have right and left channels on your camera, you might notice it, favoring one side or the other. But we can talk about that more later when it comes to your audio, whether you want mono, stereo, whatever it might be. Or you can check out my course. You'll learn everything you need to know in one-stop shop. So keep that in mind too. So that's the basic overview of our window here. So let's just get started doing something here in Resolve, right? Maybe I want a little more real estate to view here, view the timeline. I can make a few changes to the interface. Right here, if I hover over this spot right here, I can drag it up, make the viewers a little smaller, my timeline a little bigger. And then if I hover on this line in between your audio and video tracks, you can also move that around a little bit. And if you wanted to make the sides, your panels a little bit bigger, you can drag and drop that. I'm sorry, not drag and drop, but grab and slide that. Make those bigger or smaller if you want. And for now, just to get even a little more real estate, I'm going to go ahead and close my media pool. And now one thing to note is Resolve doesn't have a lot of pop-out windows, right, where we can pop things out and move things wherever we want. You're kind of locked into a certain look and feel for each one of the different tabs. You have a little bit of flexibility there as far as making things bigger and smaller, like I just showed, but for the most part, things are kind of where they are, right? You can, for example, turn off one of the viewers. So in this case, if I want one viewer instead of 2, I can click on this icon right here. It's going to show me 1 viewer versus 2. But that's one of the things that you got to get used to with Resolve is having, kind of a locked-in interface. And really, it makes a lot of sense once you get used to it. I know a lot of people are frustrated by it when you get started because you're used to being able to move panes and windows and things all over the place in other programs. But in Resolve, it's just not set up that way. But they did set it up the way that makes the most sense. It just takes a little bit of getting used to. So keep that in mind. Don't get frustrated. Just keep working with it, and eventually you'll get used to it. So making a cut in the timeline. You can come up to your timeline and grab the blade tool right here and select that. And now anywhere that we hover in our timeline here, it'll make a cut. So if I were to come, say, right here and click, it's going to make a cut on that video track. So you're able to just click where you want to make a cut, and it'll automatically kind of snap to where your cuts are. So if you want to cut multiple tracks, you could do that. But with this blade tool, it's going to cut each track for you. You can adjust it however you'd like. Now, what if you want to cut all the tracks at once, right? I don't want to click on both tracks here. I just wanted to cut them all at once. I like to use the keyboard shortcut. It's very rare that I'm actually going to use the blade tool here. Typically, I'm just going to go ahead and use the keyboard shortcut. And by default, the keyboard shortcut there is B. That should make a cut on your timeline for you. I've changed my keyboard shortcuts just to something that makes a little more sense, which I'll explain in a minute here. But hover over your clip here, and even if I have my arrow selected here, I can just put my timeline wherever I want, press my keyboard shortcut to make a cut, and you can see it cut all of the tracks there for me. So I'm going to use this method because it's just quicker when I want to cut everything on the timeline. Now, when it comes to deleting clips or removing things from the timeline, there's a couple different ways that we can do it. The first way is to just select all of your clips and then go ahead and hit your backspace key. That's going to delete your clips, but leave everything else in the timeline where it is. It's not going to move anything around. Now, if I undo that, the next way to delete your clips is to do what is called a ripple delete. And this is one that I use all the time. If I were to select these clips and then use my delete key on the keyboard, not the backspace key. So if you've got a big old keyboard like this, it's this one over here, right? Not your backspace key, which is up over there. With my clip selected, hit that delete key, and it's going to delete those clips and move everything over in the timeline for you. I use this all the time because it takes a step out of the process for me. I can select my clips, delete it, and move everything over all at once. Now, building on that idea of making a cut and getting rid of clips, there's another tool that we can use here, or a keyboard shortcut, I should say, that will make a cut for us, delete the clip, and move everything over for us. And it's called ripple delete, either start to finish or, cut to end. It's a great tool, and I use this all the time, probably the most out of all the different ways to make cuts and stuff on my timeline. So if I were to come in my timeline here, put my playhead wherever I want it, let's say right there, and I use the keyboard shortcut to make a cut, delete the clip and push everything over. This is what it does. Boom, cuts it, gets rid of the clip, and moves everything over for me. So if I just undo that real quick, if you want to know where the keyboard shortcut is, what the default is, come on up to the trim menu up here, and you can come down to ripple, and you're going to see start to playhead or end to playhead. So that's going to allow you to make a cut and delete to the left or to the right and move the clips over to the left or to the right. So for example, looking in my timeline here, if I use my start to playhead keyboard shortcut, which in my case is Q, it'll do that. It'll delete everything before the playhead. If I undo that, if I use my W key from playhead to end, if I click on that keyboard shortcut, it makes a cut and deletes everything after the playhead up until the next clip. So that is super handy. You're going to use that all the time when you're editing through your videos. And coming up with the keyboard shortcuts is the best way to do that, right? You can put your playhead where you want it to be, come in the timeline, ripple, end to playhead, and it'll do it for you that way. But it's a lot of clicks. I recommend that you set up your keyboard shortcuts in order to do these couple things really quickly. Now, the default keyboard shortcuts may not be that intuitive. I know the default for your ripple delete is something like Command Shift Delete or something. It's a couple keys. But here's what I would recommend. If you want to update your keyboard shortcuts to make your editing a little bit easier and a little bit quicker, here's what you could do. I would set up your S key to be a cut key instead of B. And then I would use the W and the Q keys to make those cut, delete, and ripple delete, both forward and backward. So let me just show you how to do that real quick, because I think that's an important thing that you should just get used to off the bat. It's going to make your edits a lot quicker and allow you just to kind of cruise through things faster, really. In order to update your keyboard shortcuts so that you match what I have and just speeds it up for you, come to DaVinci Resolve at the top left, keyboard customization. Now in here, we can change a whole ton of stuff, all the keyboard shortcuts. Everything's customizable here. So what I want you to do is come to right here, this little drop down, click Show All, click in the search, and then just type in Start to and hit Enter. Now you should see Trim come up here and come down to Ripple, and there, Start to Playhead. So I've set mine as Q. Now whatever's in there, you can just click on the little X, so that way you can get rid of the couple key command that's already there like that. And then you just click in this area, and I'm just going to say Q, and now it's set to Q as the shortcut. Once you've got that one, the next one you want to do is End to, and again, you're going to see the Trim, you're going to see Ripple, and End to Playhead. Do the same thing and make that your W key. Now, in order to set the cut key or the razor key to be S, which is what I find to work out really well, I'm going to come into the search bar here and I'm going to type razor. And that should pop up right here for you. Again, click on the X to get rid of the default keyboard shortcut and then make it S. And now you're going to use your S, your Q, and W keys to make your edits really quickly. So go ahead and hit save and then close. So in my timeline here, I can just use my S key to make my cuts. If I want to cut and ripple delete, I can use the Q key. I can move ahead a little bit using my arrow keys, use the W key. And with those three keys, I can make a cut and then delete everything forward, backwards, and move the clips at the same time. It's a really great way to just have, those three keys set up and just allows you to work really quickly here in your timeline. So let's just go ahead and delete all of these clips right here. I'm going to just select them in this case and use my delete key so that they ripple delete and all of my clips get moved over. So take a look in our timeline here. The next thing I want to do is I'm just going to mute my first audio track here because both of these tracks have the exact same audio in it because I recorded my external audio with a good microphone and synced up that external audio with both of these angles here. So I don't need to listen to both of them right now. I'm just going to mute the one track. Now let's play through a little bit of our clip here and see what we're working with so far. Now to play back your video, if you haven't figured it out yet, you're going to use the space bar and that's going to play through your timeline for you. But another quick tip here is if you want to be a little more exact with your playback and be able to go forward, backwards, slow-mo, speed it up, here is another keyboard shortcut that is going to come in handy. I use all of the time. And this is set up by default. You're going to use your J, K, and L keys. So your L key is going to play forward.
Yeah, so I remember it like it was yesterday. It was...
Your K key is going to stop it. And then your J key is going to play backwards.
So we remember.
Now, if you want to go fast forward, just press your L key the number of times you want to speed up your playback. So I'll hit it 3 times here.
Remember it like it was yesterday. It was September.
And you can see right up over here, there was a little number. It said 4 times speed. If you want to go backwards and faster than, just regular playback, press it multiple times. And you can see it'll show you how fast you're going. If you want to play your clip back in slow motion, hold down the K key and use the J key or the L key to go ahead frame by frame. And if you hold down the L, and if you hold K and L or K and J at the same time, it'll just play through in slow motion.
So I remember it like it was.
So the J, K, and L key, really handy. I use them all the time. That's where I spend most of the time with this hand on the keyboard is J, K, and L, and then the Q, W, and S keys. And I'm going back and forth. And that's what makes me be able to edit really quickly here in DaVinci Resolve. So now let's get to creating our rough edit here. I hope you've got a basic understanding of kind of the general things we're going to do, but I'm going to show you how we can now work with our clips and get our rough edit going here. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to zoom out on my timeline here a little bit using any one of the methods we already talked about. Click on the minus here. And the first thing I want to do for my rough edit is get rid of all of these spaces here where there's no dialogue. A couple ways that you can do that. The way that I like to do it is I'll just use my playhead. I'll zoom in a little bit and I will come and bring that playhead right to about where I want to make the cut. I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut S to make a cut. Then I'm going to go to where I start talking again. And in this case, instead of making just a regular cut, I'm going to use my Q key to make a cut and ripple delete. And just like that, now our clips go right together and it works out pretty good. This is what it sounds like.
Quite some time. I remember thinking, like, what am I going to do in this situation? I'm sitting in my car.
So now I'm just going to go through the rest of my clips here. I'm going to do this really quickly. And this is just my rough edit. You know, maybe with a little space like this, I might want to leave that in there. That's perfectly fine. And I'll just work through getting rid of the spaces where I'm not talking. So in your video, or if you're following along, just take some time and go through and make all these cuts, do your rough edit really quickly. And then we're going to move on to continuing to work with our video.
Let's try that part again. That storm is over.
Okay, so using Shift Z to zoom the entire timeline. Here I've got my rough edit done. I've gone ahead and just make the cuts and pulled out the parts that I don't want. But let's take a look at some of the clips in the timeline here and just see some of the things that we can do with our clips. So if I just come to my first clip right here and I zoom in on my timeline, we can select our clip. And if we hover over the end of our clip, we're going to get a symbol that looks like this. And this will allow us to either shorten or lengthen our clip. And we can do that on either side of our cut and make changes however we want. Let's say maybe I wanted to move this cut point just a little bit, but I wanted both clips to stay, you know, at that cut point. I could hover over the clip and you'll get this icon right here. I can click, hold, and drag, and now it's going to move both clips for me. So you can make adjustments that way if you want as well. Now, a couple other things you might notice on the clips themselves. We've got this little link icon, and that just tells us that this clip is linked up with another clip. And in this case, when I select them, we can see it's linked up with our audio that goes along with that clip. So that's what that means. And then you'll also have your file name right here. Now, one thing to know when it comes to your clips, and this is similar to other video editing programs, is that whatever clip is in the top track is what you're going to see in your timeline viewer up here. So if I didn't want to see this angle, for example, I could either just turn this clip off, or I could make a cut and delete a section of the clip so that I could see the clip underneath. So just a quick example here. Let's just say I wanted to make a cut right here. I could select this clip, press my cut key, come back here, make another cut. And I'm doing it while the clip is selected so that I'm only cutting this clip right here. And I could delete the clip like that, so then it would change and it would look like the angle's changing up here in our timeline viewer.
And I got to be honest,
but we're losing our audio because I got rid of the audio too. So not exactly what we'd want to do, but you can get rid of clips like that if you needed to. So I'm just going to undo that because we don't want to do that just yet. Now, let's say maybe I wanted my other track to be my main track on top, right? I just want to cut to this angle once in a while. Well, I can come over in my track area here, and I can actually move the order of these tracks. There's a few different ways to do it, but one quick way is to just right-click anywhere over here on the track and say Move Track Up. So now I've got my other angle on the top, and that's what I want to be looking at in my viewer. Now, one thing I noticed that my video track on the top here is in track 2, but my audio track is in track 1. So I'm going to fix that real quick. Again, with my audio track here, just right click and say Move Track Down. So the next tool we're going to talk about here is the inspector. And now this is where we're going to be able to make all kinds of changes to our clips. So if I select my clip that I want to make changes to, I'm going to come up to my inspector up here and open that up. When we have it selected, we can open up our inspector, and this opens all kinds of controls for us. If you come up to this little icon right here, you can click on that and it's going to make the inspector bigger for you. And we've got a ton of different tools here. Real quick, we've got transform tools like zooming and positioning, rotating, pitches and yaws, flipping the video if we wanted. Smart Reframe is a studio-only feature, so you don't need to worry about that because everything we're talking about here is going to be in the free version. We can crop our video, so if I click on crop, we've got all of our tools right there. We have dynamic zoom, which is going to add an automatic zoom in or zoom out for us. We've got our composite mode here with our clip opacity where we can fade our clip if we want to, as well as change the overlay mode of our particular clip. We can make speed changes to our clip, create speed ramps, speed things up, slow things down, play it backwards. You've got stabilization to stabilize your clips if you want to. And you can just click on any one of these and it's going to open them up for you. You can analyze for lens corrections. You've got retime and scaling. And then in Studio, you've got super scale, which is a way of just enlarging your footage that just, adds in resolution. So you're not going to have that in the free version, but you'll have it in Studio. So this is where we're going to make all the changes to our clips. Now, if I select this clip and let's say maybe I wanted to zoom it in a little bit, I could just come to my transform section, zoom it in a little bit, and I notice my head's off the screen. So then I can come to my Y position and bring it down. And now it's good to go. It changes everything for that clip. Now, when we're looking at our transform section here and many of our other sections, you notice we've got these little diamonds, and that's if you wanted to make keyframes. I'm not going to talk about keyframes in this video, but I do have a keyframes crash course I just put out on YouTube recently that you can check out, give you all the ins and outs of how to make keyframes, but that basically allows you to, make a change to a certain point and then either stop that change or change and do something different. So you've got keyframes there if you want them. So the tools that I find myself using the most are the zoom and the position right here. Occasionally I'll use the anchor, but not too often. And you might say, well, hey, this seems like a little difficult. What if I just want to grab it on the screen here and move it around? Well, you can certainly do that. And if we just make a little more space here, I'm going to zoom in on my timeline viewer here by just using my middle mouse wheel. If you come over here to this little drop down, you're going to see we've got different options here. And one of them is transform. So if I click on that, and then zoom out a little bit, you're going to see now we have a box around our clip. And we can just drag this around. We can scale it however we want. You can do a little picture-in-picture up over here if you want. And it's going to change the numbers over here based on whatever we're doing. So if you wanted to see, what's your zoom factor or whatever, you can do that. You can click on this one to rotate it if you want. But sometimes it's just easier to adjust things on the screen. You can even do it when you make keyframes, set a keyframe there, move ahead in your timeline, and then move this around and it'll create the keyframes for you. But really handy to know that you can use this transform to adjust the clip on screen. I didn't know that for a long time, and that makes it a lot easier to do things. If you wanted to reset any item that you might change in the inspector here, just double click on zoom, boom, resets it. Or you can click on the little circle arrow icon over here. That's going to also reset it for you. If you want to reset all of these items at once in like a given category, like transform, you can hit the top icon here and it's going to reset everything for you. Also in our inspector, we can work with our audio. We can adjust the volume, the pan. We've got some tools in here. Voice isolation is a studio only feature. You'll have the dialogue leveler. Music remixer is studio only. You can adjust the pitch. And you've got an EQ that you can work with here in the edit tab. That's a smaller version of the EQ that we've got in Fairlight. So a lot of things that we can do right here in the edit page using the inspector and just working with the clips that we've got in the edit page here. Now, also in our inspector here, you can look at effects, which we currently don't have any applied, but we'll get into using them later. And you'll see all of the tools that you can use to modify and change your effects. You've got a spot for transitions here where we're going to be able to modify transitions. You've got a spot for images and then file information for the given file that you have selected. So you'll just see your audio channels, your time code, different metadata about your particular clip. Primarily, you're going to be in video, audio, effects, or transition when it comes to the inspector. Now, the other tool that I like to have open all the time as an audio guy here is the mixer. So if I go ahead and open up my mixer, this is the mixer, and this is how we can work with our audio in the edit tab right here. So let me just show you what we have in the mixer here real quick, because this is another important thing that you're going to want to use to make changes to your audio. Now, I do love to jump into Fairlight, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but there's a lot of functionality right here in the edit page that we can use, and it brings the tools from Fairlight over to here for us. So if you're not an audio guru like me and you don't want to really get into it too much, you could just work with the mixer right here in the edit tab, and you're still going to be able to get awesome audio. So just looking at the mixer real quick, you've got each one of your audio tracks here. They'll all appear. You have your bus 1, which is your main audio output from DaVinci Resolve. Below that, we've got our effects, EQ, and dynamics that by double clicking any one of these, we can open that up. And these are the items that we would see in Fairlight if we were over in Fairlight. So the ability to double click and open up the full EQ here from Fairlight in the edit page is brand new in DaVinci Resolve 19, but it just saves you the time of having to jump into Fairlight. But now you've got your 6-band EQ here that you can work with. Same for your effects. If you have any effects applied to your track already, you need to have something already on here in order to open them up, but you can select it and open them up here in the edit tab when you have effects on your track. And dynamics as well, double click that. Now we can work with our compressor, our limiter, our expander, and our dynamics right here in the edit page, which is really sweet and just saves you guys some time instead of having to jump over into Fairlight. Below that, we've got our pan options. We can pan our audio anywhere we want. You can also double click to open up the pan window. Reset it there if you need to. Below that, we've got our track names, where if you want to change your track name here, you can double click it, change the name. We've also got our solo and mute buttons, which is the same as we have over in our track area over here. And then we've got our fader, and this is going to help us adjust the volume of our audio track. Now you can adjust the levels right here by using the fader, but I recommend that you actually adjust the levels on the clip first. So let's just take a look at our audio levels while we're talking about the mixer here and see where they're falling. So in this case, I'm going to want to use audio track 2. So I'm going to look at the mixer here, and I want my audio levels to be around this minus 10 dB on the meters when they light up. So let's see where we're at.
Yeah, so I remember it like it was yesterday. It was September 8th, 2023, around 3:30 in the afternoon.
So it's a little bit low there. I want to bring it up a little bit. Few ways I can do that. On our audio clip here, we've got this little white line that's called our gain line. I can boost that up if I want to, and that's going to make it louder. You can see by 5.41 dB, I made it louder.
I was just sitting there waiting at the bus stop like I do every day.
So it's pretty close. It's going to go above and below that minus 10 a little bit, but in this case, I'm going to make it a little bit louder, and it's okay if it goes over a little, okay if it's a little under. We're going to work with that more later on, but it's good to know that we're at least in the ballpark of where we want to be for this particular audio clip.
Okay, and this storm just came in, and it came barreling in.
All right, perfect. I think that's good. There's a bunch of different ways you can set your audio levels here. You can do it the way I did it using this white line on our clip. You can also come up in your inspector here and move your slider here or hover over the number and you'll get those little arrows. Click, hold, and drag, and it's going to give you a little more precise movement there. You can also click on this white line and hold your shift key, and that's going to allow you to make much more precise adjustments than if you don't hold the shift key. It's going to jump around a little bit more, a little bit quicker on you. And the other way that you can do it is actually to normalize the audio. And there's nothing wrong with doing it this way. You right click and come on up to normalize audio levels. And the one that I typically pick is sample peak program right here, but you've got different options on different levels that you can use. Go ahead and hit normalize, and it's going to automatically set those levels for you. So in this case, I'm just going to leave it on the normalized setting, and we'll work with our audio more a little bit later. So let's say coming back to our video clip here, I want to zoom this in a little bit because I can see my light stand and a chair over here a little bit. So let's go ahead and zoom this in so I can try and get most of that out of there. Maybe something like that looks pretty good. We can always add in something later on to kind of hide this or get rid of this over here. So I'm not too worried about that. But let's say I like these settings, and now in my timeline, if I hit Shift Z, I want all of my clips from this angle to have those same settings. I want to copy and paste all my settings from one clip to the other clips in my timeline. So the first thing I want to do is select my clip, and I'm going to use Command or Control C, the universal copy command. Then I want to come to another clip, and instead of using Command or Control V, because if I did that, it would paste the clip in there. I don't want that. I just want the settings from the clip. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to select the clip or multiple clips that I want to paste those settings to. And I'm going to use Alt or Option plus the V key. And that's going to bring up this window right here, Paste Attributes. So now I can select what attributes I want to paste onto this clip. And in this case, I want to paste all of the video attributes, and I want to paste all of the audio attributes. I want to do both. So that way, all of the clips are similar to the first clip that I edited. And this saves me time from having to do this on every single clip. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Apply. And now we can see our clips change color just a little bit because they've all been edited. And when I just click through my timeline, we've got the same zoom and scale and location for my clip for all the clips in the timeline. So how you guys doing? You hanging in there? You doing okay? With the stuff that we covered, that's probably, I'd say 75% of what you need to know to be able to create your videos here in DaVinci Resolve. It's all the basics of the tools and the things that you're going to use all the time on every video again and again and again after each other. So you get some of these basics down and you're going to be off and running, be able to work with your projects and be able to create some awesome videos. But now let's get into taking our rough edit here and just adding to it and kind of building out this little mini documentary here. So now that we have a basic rough edit going on here in DaVinci Resolve, let's start to clean this up a little bit, right? Now I do have two angles here and I kind of want to go back and forth between my two angles. So let's take a look at our second angle here. I'm just going to turn off my top track here so I can see my second angle. And I'm going to select my clip here and see if I want to make any changes as far as what the clip looks like. Do I want to zoom it in a little bit? I think so. So I'm going to come to my inspector here, click, hold, and drag on my zoom it up. And then I'll also adjust my Y scale a little bit to move it up. And I think that looks pretty good. Scroll back and forth there. Maybe I'll make it a little smaller. I don't want my head to get chopped off there. So we'll shrink it down a little. Move my Y down because I want to make sure that, my video goes to the end of the frame, right? So that's important. Now I want to take these settings and copy it to all of the other clips in my timeline from this angle. So again, I'm going to use Shift-Z. I'm going to select my clip, Command or Control-C to copy it. Select all my clips. Option or Alt-V to bring up my paste attributes. I'm going to make sure I have all my videos selected and hit apply. So now we've got a good angle there, and I think that's where I want to be. So what I can do now is just turn on both video tracks, and now I can watch through and decide when do I want to cut back and forth between clips. So let's go ahead and play through and see where we want to make a cut.
Yeah, so I remember it like it was yesterday. It was September 8th. 2023, around 3:30 in the afternoon. I was just sitting there.
So let's
around 3:30 in the afternoon.
Let's say right here looks like a good spot to make a cut. So I want to make a cut on my top track. So I'm going to select it so that I only affect that track. I could also just turn off these auto track selectors. So then I can just make cuts wherever I want or lock those tracks. Either way would be fine. And then I can use my keyboard shortcut to make a cut. And then I'm going to see where I want this angle to finish.
Bus stop, like I do every day.
So right here, I'm going to make another cut. And now on this clip, I could click it, and I could use Option or Alt to click it and just delete that part. Or what I like to do is just to make sure I've got some options here is I just like to turn off the opacity for this clip. So if I select it, I can come into my inspector. I'm going to come down to Composite and just turn off the opacity. So now when my play heads over that clip, I'm not going to see it. I'm going to see my second angle. And here's what that looks like. I can turn off the box around my screen there by clicking this.
I was just sitting there waiting at the bus stop like I do every day. And this storm just came in and it came up like I do every day.
So you can see it'll just go right back and forth. Looks like I'm changing angles there. Now, one thing I did notice that in this frame, my head's way over here. And in this frame, I'm all the way on the left. So let's move this one over a little bit. Just going to slide it over some more by selecting my clip, moving it over. And now since I made that one change, I'm going to have to copy and paste this to the rest of my clips. So again, I'm just going to select it, Command or Control-C, Option or Alt-V, paste attributes, boom, we're good to go. So I'm just going to go through my video here and make changes and cuts where I think it makes sense. So I'll speed up through that for you, and then we'll jump on to the next step. All right, so I went through, made my cuts, and turned off the opacity for some of the clips where I wanted to change angles. Now, like I said, you could do this a lot easier with a multicam clip, but that's a little more advanced than I wanted to show in this class. And you can even see that I made the mistake of, cutting both tracks, which is perfectly fine. Making a cut is not going to make a jump in the audio or anything like that. It'll just continue to play through. So if you accidentally do that, you cut more than one track, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. So now if your playback is getting a little slow and a little laggy, let me give you a few tips here on what you can do to make your playback a little bit smoother here in DaVinci Resolve. First thing to know is that Studio is going to run smoother than the free version for you. So Studio just allows you to use the GPU better and more, and then the free version is just a limitation of the free version. So if you're thinking about getting Studio, definitely get it. It's 100% worth it. A small little plug for Studio. But if you come on up to your playback menu up here, come down to Timeline Playback Resolution, and instead of doing full, you do either half or quarter. That's going to make it, the screen, for example, if I click on quarter, it may look a little bit blurrier, but that's just the playback, right? It's going to just make it easier for Resolve and your computer to play back the footage. It may look a little fuzzy, so when you get into doing finer detailed things, you might want to change it back to full. But by changing the Timeline Playback Resolution to quarter, that's going to help make playback easier for you and easier on your machine. If you have a powerful computer, don't worry about it. Just leave it on full. The next one is render cache, and in this case, it's set to none, but I typically use smart, or you could use user. And what this does is allow DaVinci Resolve to kind of pre-render things in the background when you're not working. So if you stop for 5 seconds by default, Resolve will start doing work in the background, right? And then once you start working again, Resolve will take a break, and that way, it's not using the resources while you're trying to work. But as soon as you stop moving your mouse, maybe you get up to go, take a coffee break, Resolve's going to start working in the background to render some of the stuff like transitions or effects or things like that you might have on your clips. So I typically leave this on smart, and that works out pretty good. Now, one thing to note with the render cache is that it can take up a lot of space on your hard drive over time. I'm talking like hundreds of gigs. So from time to time, you want to come in here and you could delete render cache for your specific project. Or if you have multiple projects and you want to see how much render cache you're actually taking up on your hard drive, you can click on Manage Render Cache. And that's going to show you exactly where it is, along with how much render cache you have. And you can just click on it and then do Clear Render Cache. You'll see all your projects listed. You can sort them when you have multiple projects, see how much space is getting eaten up on your hard drive there, and then you can clear selected cache if you want to. So important to know that, because over time that's going to take up a lot of space. So just wanted to put that out there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit close. Now, if you're still having trouble with playback, it's still a little choppy, it's not working smoothly, you can come up here and use proxies and create proxies or optimize media. I'm not going to talk about it in this video, but you can do that, and that's going to create proxy files for you that are already like pre-rendered that should play back quicker here for you in Resolve. But another pro tip here, and a tip that I use all the time, is that even if you film in a higher resolution footage like 4K, 6K, 8K, 12K, 1 gazillion K, whatever it is, I always edit in a 1080 timeline. And the reason is because it's easier for your computer to process a 1080 timeline. Even if your clips are higher resolution, that's fine. Just use them as they are. Create your timeline in 1080, and then you can always change your timeline after the fact when you're done editing your project. Change it back to 4K, 12K, whatever it is, and then render out that higher resolution timeline. But by editing on a 1080 timeline, it's just going to make it easier for your machine to process stuff. So I think that's an important one, that even if you're just using 4K, you're like, hey, 4K ain't that big a deal, huh? It'll still bog down your machine a little bit. And if you just edit in a 1080 timeline, change it back to 4K before you render, that's going to help speed things up for you. So back to our project, let's start adding in some of our extra footage that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and close my inspector for now, make a little more room on the screen. I'm going to open up my media pool. And now we're going to start looking through and seeing what kind of footage we want to add where. So to look at any of your footage that you've got in the media pool, you can just hover over it and scrub over it, and you'll see it appear in your viewer over there on the left. I can double click it and it'll put it in here, and now I can just come and scrub around. I can play through it by hitting the space bar if I want. I can use any one of the controls here if I want to. And I can also set in and out points, which will allow me to bring in just a section of the clip instead of the entire clip. Because if I just click, hold, and drag from the viewer here, it'll drop the whole clip in the timeline. But if I just want a section of the clip, I'm going to want to set in and out points. And you can use these two buttons right here to set in and out points. But if I'll come back here, let's say I want to go and grab, let's say from right here, I'm going to press I on my keyboard to set an in point, or you could use this key right here. Going to go ahead a little bit. And again, your J, K, and L keys work up here too. And then I'm going to press O for an out key. So now I've got just that section of the clip selected. I can click, hold, and drag and bring it down in my timeline. So I'm just going to play through my timeline a little bit here. And I'm going to see where do I want to actually put this clip. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, play through my timeline, and see where I want to put it.
Around 3:30 in the afternoon, I was just sitting there waiting at the bus stop like I do every day. And this storm just came in, and it came barreling in. And this storm just came in, and it came barreling in.
All right, so I think that's a good spot for it. Now I notice I do have another piece of footage up here. So let's double click that, see what we got. Okay, we got the rain. It's going to pan over to me, and then it's going to pan out to the storm. So I think I want to add these two clips together to create the little bit of B-roll there that goes along with what I'm talking about. So in this clip, I'm going to come back here, show myself sitting in the car, move ahead a little bit, maybe to like here, an out point, and then I'm just going to drag this down into my timeline, and I'm going to put it right next to the other clip that I already put in the timeline. So let's move these up a little bit. Let's take a look and see what that looks like.
At the bus stop, like I do every day, and this storm just came in, and it came barreling in fast.
All right, not too bad, but let's say maybe I wanted to fade in these clips. How can I fade in the clips? Well, if we hover over our clips, you're going to see there's little handles on every clip. This is going to work for video clips as well as audio clips. All you have to do is grab that little handle, drag it in, and it's telling me how many frames that I'm creating that fade in over. So in this case, 13 frames. Let's say I'm going to go 12 frames. And then let's say I want it to fade out. So I'm going to grab the end one on the second clip there, fade it out for 13 frames or so. And that looks pretty good. Here's what that looks like.
Bus stop like I do every day. And this storm just came in and it came barreling in fast and just really.
So that's looking better. We can fade in our clips like that. Now these two clips hard cut from one clip to the next, but let's say I wanted to add in a transition, and transitions are a topic that everybody loves here in video editing, right? We want to add in some transitions. So let's say I want to put a transition here right in between my two clips. So to find our transitions, we are going to come up to our effects library right here and click on that. And you can leave your media pool open, perfectly fine, not a big deal. And if you come over here to video transitions, these are all of the built-in transitions here in DaVinci Resolve. Now, I do have some extra ones that I've added in there, but these are the basics that you'll have in DaVinci Resolve. So the more basic ones are towards the top, and the more advanced ones are towards the bottom a little bit here under Fusion Transitions. You've got things like brightness flash, camera shake, checkerboard wipe, spins, all kinds of cool stuff. You can try these out. And to apply it, really easy. All you have to do is click, hold, and drag one of these onto that cut in between your two clips. So I just want something basic like a general crossfade. So I'm going to come to the top, got my crossfade, come over here, and I'm just going to drop it right onto my clips. And if I zoom in, we can see right here is my transition. Here's what it looks like in my viewer right here.
And it came barreling in.
Okay, just a little crossfade, nothing too fancy, little crossfade. If I wanted to make the transition longer or shorter, I can click, hold, and drag, make it longer or shorter.
And it came barreling in.
And you see this little red line above there, that is where we had set the render cache to do smart caching. So when I stop moving my mouse, that's going to start to build a blue line there. And the blue line means, hey, that's pre-rendered in the background. It's good to go. You can still play through the clip when it's red, but it might be a little more choppy versus when it turns blue and it's like pre-rendered in the background.
And it came barreling.
So now you can see it's blue there and it's kind of pre-rendered in the background and it's going to play back smoother for you. Now, if you want to make any adjustments to any one of the transitions, you can come in here, select the transition. If you double click it, you're going to get a real precise look here at where the transition is. You can make adjustments if you need to. You can also open up your inspector right here, select the transition section, and here you've got the different types of transitions, different number of frames. You can set it as your default transition, so you can use the keyboard shortcut if you want to. You can change the alignment of it, the ratio, the ins, the outs, all this stuff right here. You can change however you'd like to customize it however you might want to. And you're going to have these options for any transition that you use here in DaVinci Resolve. So for now, I'm good with where it is. I'm just going to go ahead and close my inspector and deselect the clip by just clicking and dragging this down a little so I've got some space. I'm just going to click on the timeline over here somewhere outside of the clips. So now we've added in your first transition. Now you can go transition crazy like the rest of the internet there and throw on transitions. But there's a lot of cool ones here in Resolve that I use often. You just get in there, try them out. That's the best way to figure out what they do, how they work, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna make my video clips a little smaller here because I don't need to see them too big. A couple things to note. If you're having trouble dropping a transition onto a cut like this, it may be because there's no handles on either side of these two clips. So for example, let me just show you what that would look like. If I zoom way out, let's just copy these over real quick. And a little pro tip here, to copy a clip like that, if you hold your Option or Alt key when they're selected, you could just click, hold, and drag, and it's going to make a copy. And it'll just keep making copies for you. So pro tip right there for you. But let's say I extend these clips all the way out. I'm going to just separate them, extend that one all the way out, extend this one all the way. So it's extended all the way, so there's no clip before this one or after this one. If I put them together like this, and then we zoom in on the cut here, and I try to apply a transition, you're going to see it's not going to let me drop it on there. The way Resolve works is it needs a little bit of overlap between the two clips in order to drop the transition on there. And that may seem different than other programs in the way that it looks on screen, but what it's doing in the background is the same thing as other programs. The other programs are just automatically looking for the extra frames and figuring it out. With Resolve, if it doesn't let you just drop it on here, it's because you just need to take a few frames off of either one of your clips. So in this case, I could use my arrow keys to just go ahead, like say 3 frames, and then I'm going to use my Q key to make a cut and push them back together. And on the other side, 3 frames, my W key to make a cut and ripple delete. And now I can come and drop on that transition. If I zoom in And the size that you can make it is going to be dependent on, if you have enough handles underneath where the cut is. So in this case, I just used 3 frames on each side so I can make it a 6-frame transition. If I wanted to make it longer, let's just say I made a bigger cut here, and you notice the transition stays automatically, which is pretty nice. Now I can make it bigger because I have more handles underneath where that cut is, and it would look like this, a little slower. And there you go. So stretching out that transition is just going to make it longer or shorter. And if you have trouble, try shortening one of your clips. You could just do it 1 frame on each side and still get the transition in there. So try that out and see how that works out for you. Now, if one clip, another just quick tip here, if one clip has handles and one doesn't, so let me just get back to putting these 2 clips together here. So let's say this clip is a little shorter and it's got space after the clip, but this one does not. If I put them together and I try and put on that transition, you'll notice it'll only go to one side, right? Because there's only one clip that has the transition on it, or the handles on it, so we can stretch it out. You still basically get the same effect, but it may look like it's only on one side of the cut, but it should still work out okay for you. So that is your transitions in a nutshell. So I'm just going to select both these guys and delete them. Shift-Z to zoom everything. Now let's get back into adding in some more B-roll. So what other clips do we have? We have a clip of my dog right here, and it's a slow motion clip, the dog running. Now we have audio associated with this clip, and when you have a clip in your viewer here that has both video and audio, you're going to see video and audio right here. Because what I can do is I can grab either just the video or just the audio and bring it down in my timeline. For example, if I wanted just the audio, I could click, hold, and drag on this, and I'm just going to get the audio. If I want just the video, click, hold, and drag, and I got just the video. Now I know there's a part where I was talking about the dog, so let's find that part and put in this B-roll clip.
Then as I was sitting there, I thought, did I leave the dog outside? I couldn't remember because there was nothing happening, so there was nothing to make me remember that, right?
All right, so right here is where we want to add in that clip. So I'm going to start with me talking a little.
Then as I was sitting there, I thought, did I leave the dog?
All right, so right where I start to say that, I'm just going to click and drag this clip back. I'm going to fade it in just like we did earlier. So I'm going to fade that in 10, 11 frames, something like that. And now when I play it, you're going to notice we're still going to see the clips underneath on either side. So what can we do about that? Here's what that looks like so far.
Dog outside, I couldn't remember because there was nothing happening.
So we have a couple options here. I could select my clip, open up my inspector, put the playhead over the clip so I can see it. I could zoom it in so I see the dog in the whole clip like that.
Dog outside, I couldn't remember because there was nothing happening.
I could do that, or here is a cool little tip just to use some effects here in Resolve. There's a ton of different stuff you could do, but if I just go ahead and reset this clip for us here, select it, reset. I did film this on my phone with obviously holding it vertically, but what I can do is actually add this same video clip in the background and blur it out, just to kind of give it some different visual interest. So in order to do that, let's jump into our effects right here. I'm going to close my media pool for now just to get it out of the way. I want to go to my open effects, and if you scroll down towards the bottom, we have a great one here called blanking fill. So I'm just going to click, hold, and drag and drop that onto my clip. And once I drop it onto the clip, it's going to blur out the background. Now we can select this clip, jump up into our inspector under the effects tab right here, and now we're going to see the options we have for this particular effect. So I'm going to click on the source right here, and we can change the zoom as well as the crop. We can also crop the top and the bottom if we want. We can make it a little bit bigger. You've got options on how you want it to look. We can tell Resolve how we want it to fill the frame. We can zoom to the timeline. We can manually do it, wrap the top layer. You've got options on how you want to do it there. Let's zoom it in a little bit more there. Under Fill Appearance, we can blend the edges here. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. Blend the edges there. You can blur the background more or less, depending on what you like. You can change the fade amount where it'll fade that a little bit into the background on top of whatever color you want. So in this case, let's change it to black. So if I double click that, I'll get this little color wheel, we'll just say black. So now when I change the fade amount, it can make it disappear if we want, but just to darken it up a little bit like that, looks pretty good. And if you decide you want to change any of these back to the default, just double click the name and it's going to automatically reset that for you. We can add on a drop shadow to our image, right? Crank that up. You can see now we've got a drop shadow around our image there. Change the blur, change all these different things. You can blend it in if you want to blend it in a little bit more, depending on how you want the effect to look. But blanking fill is great when you're working with photos or vertical video. You want it to fill the frame. A great way that you can create this cool effect fast, easy, right here in DaVinci Resolve. And there's tons of stuff like this in Resolve. Obviously, I don't have enough time to go over it. This video is going to be long enough, but tons of awesome stuff here in Resolve that you can use when it comes to all kinds of effects. So if you can dream it up and think about it, you could probably do it right here in DaVinci Resolve. So I like the way that that's looking. I'm going to go ahead and close my inspector. Let's just zoom out a little bit, play through this little section here and see how it's looking in our timeline viewer right here.
And then as I was sitting there, I thought, did I leave the dog outside? I couldn't remember because there was nothing happening, so there was nothing to make me.
All right, so I think that's good. I think it's perfect. That's working out just fine. So I'm going to close my effects library, open my media pool back up, and now I'm just going to continue to go through my clips here and edit together this mini documentary. So now that I've got my timeline here all set up, the edits are made, the cuts are where I like it, the next thing that I like to do is start to work with my audio. And when it comes to audio, the first thing that I want to work with is the dialogue, because that's the most important part of the mini documentary, your movie, your video, whatever it might be. You want that dialogue to be clear and to come through nice and strong. So as I talked about already, you want to set those dialogue levels, which is how loud is the dialogue when we look at our meters. We want to set that around minus 10 dB. So if I were to come into the edit page here, open the mixer. Now I've got a whole bunch of tracks in here because in this timeline, I've already added in my music and sound effects, which we're going to talk about in a minute here. But on this track right here, my Studio MKE 600, which is the microphone I used, I want to start to work with that audio a little bit. And the first thing, check those levels. So if I play through the clip, let's see where the levels are at. And I'm actually going to solo this track, so I only hear this particular track.
I remember it like it was yesterday. It was September 8th, 2023.
So that's pretty close there, not too bad, right? And we're about 5 dB, right? So that looks pretty good. Now, what else do we want to do when we start working with our dialogue and our audio? So we can do some of this in the edit tab, but let's jump over to Fairlight just so I can give you a little taste of what Fairlight is like. So click on the musical notes at the bottom. And over here in Fairlight is where we can do a ton of audio work. So you'll see some of the same kinds of things in this screen here. We've got our media pool, our effects, your index, your sound library. We've got groups, which you don't need to worry about for now. You've got your mixer, which is going to be very important here in the Fairlight page. You've got your meters, which allows you to see all of your tracks in a glance, as well as some other loudness meters and your little video or a little viewer of your video. Got your metadata, and you also have your inspector where you can make changes for audio clips here in Fairlight. So you can't work with video in here. This is primarily an audio editing space or tab. We've got many of the same tools here when it comes to looking and playing through our video, your loop, play, record, stop, fast forward. You've got automation controls here, which you don't need to know about for now. And then we've got our main tools right down in here. Again, we've got our pointer mode. We've got different ways of selecting different things in our timeline, the snapping that you're familiar with, the linked selection that you should be familiar with, as well as our markers and flags, transients. You don't even have to worry about that. And then these are your ways to zoom in addition to the keyboard shortcuts and the middle mouse wheel like we had already talked about in the edit page. So a lot of things are going to travel with you from page to page. And in this case, we've got our audio and we can see our video clips here as well. Now, if you click on this icon right here, your timeline view options, these are the different view options that you can have right here in Fairlight. Now, you don't have to see your video tracks, and by default, I don't think you actually do. It looks like this. But if you want to see those video tracks, just click on your timeline view options, display video tracks right here. You can also display your full waveforms and select these different options, which the default settings are probably going to be fine for you for right now. When it comes to our tracks, you're going to see the same things that we saw on the edit page. You might see some more information here, but if I turn off these controls right here, which you don't need anyway, that I already said, you're not going to see those extra controls. Now in the mixer is where we have access to a whole host of different tools. We've got our track level effects right here. We've got our order, so we can change the order in which the audio is processed. We've got effects. We have dynamics, which are things like your compressor. We have an EQ, and then we have our pan and bus sends and different kinds of things going on here. I'm not going to get too into the weeds on this. I'm just going to show you some basic stuff here. If you want to learn more about audio, I've got tons of free videos here on YouTube, as well as my course is going to break it all down, give you everything you need to know in one spot. But when it comes to your audio and working with your audio, the first thing that I like to do is actually do a little bit of EQ. So in our mixer here, I like to change my order to EQ, effects, and then dynamics. And that's the order in which these things are going to be applied to our audio clip. So I start with EQ, and if I just double click it, it's going to open it up for me. Now I've already gone ahead and prepared an EQ for this particular track, but let's say I wanted to start from scratch, right? So with the EQ here, the whole idea is that we want to use the EQ to remove things that don't sound good in our audio. So let me just go ahead and we're going to reset this, and we're going to go ahead. I'm going to show you how to work with the EQ here. Now I'm not going to go too in depth, but basically the idea is that we've got several different points in our EQ where we can select certain frequencies and either raise that frequency or reduce that frequency. When it comes to EQ, primarily you want to make cuts before you ever boost anything. Cuts means we want to drop it out like this. We want to reduce a frequency, not boost it up. Sometimes, yes, we do want to boost it, but for the majority of the time, you want to remove things that don't sound good versus trying to add things to make it sound better, if that makes sense. So we've got different points here, and each point allows us to select what that point looks like. We've got things like a shelf, a low shelf, a bell curve, a super steep point that just drops it all the way down. And then we've got a high shelf. So for example, 0.5 here is already a high shelf. So if I grabbed it, pulled it up, you can see what it does. And 1 is already a low shelf, or actually it's a high pass filter, which means it cuts out everything below it, passes everything else through it. So the gist of the EQ here is to remove those things that we don't want. And let's just run through this real quick. I'm going to give you a couple of pointers here, and we could go into it more in depth in other videos, both that I've already got on YouTube as well as in my class if you take the class. But what I like to do is just loop a section of my video here, play it over and over again, and make some adjustments. So in order to loop a section of video here in Fairlight, I can come into my timeline, I can grab this tool right here, and I can just make a little selection. And you can also set in and out points if you want to. That works out perfectly fine too, but I just like using that range tool. So you can also do this in the edit tab where we were. You just need to set your in and out points. And then you want to look in your timeline in your toolbar for this icon, the loop icon. And now as long as your playhead is inside of those points, when you hit play, it'll just keep looping that over and over again. So with our EQ, we're going to play back our dialogue here, and I'm just going to go through and grab my points and lift them up, listen for something that sounds harsh to my ears, and then I'm going to make a cut there. So I'm just going to play through, I'm going to make all the changes, and then I'm going to explain to you real quick what I did. So here we go.
Around 3:30 in the afternoon, I was just sitting there waiting at the bus stop like I do every day. And this storm just came in, and it came barreling in fast and just really unexpected. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was September 8th, 2023, around 3:30 in the afternoon. I was just sitting there waiting at the bus stop like I do every day. And this storm just came in, and it came barreling in fast and just really unexpected. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was September 8th, 2023, around 3:30 in the afternoon. I was just sitting there waiting at the bus stop like I do every day. And this storm just came in, and it came barreling in fast and just really unexpected. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was September 8th, 2023.
Okay, so here are the changes that I made to the EQ. I think it helps clean it up a little bit, just sounds a little bit crisper. Took out some of the sounds I didn't like. And just looking at it real quick, overview, high level, what I did, I reduced the low end. I took that out because with dialogue, you don't need that, right? It's just gonna muddy up our dialogue for us. Then around, 300 hertz here, and around 700, I had some boxy sounding audio that I didn't like, so I reduced that a little bit. And then your vocals and dialogue, a lot of it lives in that 1 to 2K range, where if you make a cut in there, it's gonna help clean it up quite a bit. So that's what I did here on point number 4. Now in band number 5 here, I made a slight boost, and if you boost in the 4 to 8K range, it's gonna help with the clarity of your dialogue a little bit. And then finally on point 6, I just cut out some of the high-end frequencies because I don't need those with dialogue either. Now, you don't need to use all these points. You could just do bigger sweeping points if you want. And there's lots of ins and outs of the EQ here, different frequencies of where to look for harsh sounds and things like that. I cover all that in my audio course, as well as the EQ crash course I have here on YouTube. You can check that out. But I talk about all the knobs, buttons, and dials, what frequencies to look for things. But the EQ is one of the first tools you want to go to when you're trying to fix audio. If you're going to learn one audio tool, EQ is it. Go learn that. And there are some presets up in here you can try out that come in DaVinci Resolve. And then I've got a bunch of presets too, which if you buy my course, you're going to get those. If not, they're on my Shopify too. But you can try out the presets too that come built into Resolve and see how they work out. So I'm going to say that looks pretty good. Let's go with that. Next, I like to work with a little dynamics. And in this case, I'm going to open up my dynamics. Now, there are some presets in here that you can use again, right? Any of these guys, you can pick them and use them. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the dynamics right here. Now, what we have in the dynamics is several different things. We've got an expander or gate. We've got a compressor and a limiter. The limiter, I pretty much don't use inside of the dynamics here on a track level because I'm going to set my audio levels to be in the right spot first. I'm not going to need a limiter on my individual tracks for the most part. Always exceptions to the rule, but that's kind of typically what I do. The compressor I use on pretty much every track that has dialogue. And what the compressor does is it takes our loud parts and our quiet parts and reduces that dynamic range a little bit. Why do we want to do that? Because when our audience is watching our video, if we have loud parts and quiet parts, and there's a big difference, well, at the loud parts, we might need to turn down the volume. And at the quiet parts, we might need to turn up the volume. And you don't want that. You want your audience to have a good listening volume for everything and be able to listen to it at the same volume on their device, TV, computer, whatever. So the compressor is going to help us not peak and help reduce any of those higher spikes in our audio that we might not want to, get too close to peaking or clipping. And then in the dynamics, we also have the makeup, which I use in conjunction with the compressor because it helps take our quiet parts and make them a little bit louder. So instead of having audio up here and down here as far as loud and quiet, we kind of bring that dynamic range a little bit closer. We still have a difference there because you want the loud to be louder and the quiet to be quieter, but we want to be able to reduce that dynamic range a little bit. But when you're recording, you want to make sure you record all that dynamic range so we've got options when we get into post. So with the compressor, you can just turn it on. You can try some of these presets. Like I said, I'm not going to go over all the buttons and dials here because I have that in another video and as well as in my course. And it just takes a little while to go over everything. But the important part is you probably do want to use some compression to catch those louder parts. Like if I look at my audio clip here, these louder parts right here, it would probably grab that and make it not so loud. And if I just play through a little bit over here, you'll be able to see it in action. This middle meter here is the compressor working. The last meter here is the limiter, which we're not actually using at the moment. And then our expander right here. And really quickly, the expander, what that does is it takes everything that's below a certain dB level. So in this case, below -18, and it makes it a little bit quieter, a little bit quicker. So you can see this yellow line instead of, doing a line that looks like that, where it just goes to 0, we can increase the ratio and say, hey, make that background noise or whatever is below, in this case, -18 dB, make that quieter quicker because I don't want to hear it. It's in the background. I want it quieter, right? So let's just play through this little clip here and you can see it in action. I'll turn it on and off.
I was just sitting there waiting at the bus stop like I do every day. And this storm just came in and it came barreling in fast and just really
So you can see it's working a little bit there. If you just wanted to see it work more, I can crank the ratio up.
Expected. I mean, I had no idea that it was coming. Yeah, so I remember it like it was yesterday. It was September 8th, 2023, around 3:30.
And you can see it may be hard to hear the difference, especially when you're not used to listening to different audio things. But compressors, very, very important. I use it on all my dialogue, and you're probably going to want it too. I've got videos on it. You can go learn more about that and just add that in if you feel like it's something you need. As well as the expander, I recommend that. The gate just cuts the sound off even quicker than the expander, but they both come in handy. Built-in tools, free version studio, it's there, and I would use it if you need it. So that's the dynamics in a quick nutshell. Then I like to go in and add in some effects. I like to add in a multi-band compressor, which allows me to bring back some body and fullness into my dialogue. So if I just turn these on, here's a little before and after with this little section here.
30 in the afternoon. I was just sitting there waiting at the bus stop like I do every day. And this storm just came in and it came barreling in fast. And
so hopefully you can hear the difference there. It just takes different ranges of the audio frequency and adds compression to them. Again, not going to go over all the knobs, buttons, and dials, but you could just apply this effect, put on the standard preset, and if you want to make changes, just use the gain knob in each one of the sections that are on there by default. You can bring it up and bring it down, and you're going to hear a difference, right? And I like to use the multi-band compressor to kind of thicken the audio back up after I've done a little EQ, and I've pulled out some things I don't like and added in my dynamics. And finally, on dialogue, I like to add in a de-esser, and Resolve has a good built-in one. So here you've got presets again. You can just go ahead and pick a preset. That's usually what I'll start with. Then I'll adjust the range here because I don't necessarily always want it, however it comes. And I'll change the amount because usually it's a little too much, so I'll dial it back. And we can see whether it's working or not by looking at the meter right here, the reduction. If that's lighting up, it's doing something. If it's not,
just
it's not doing anything.
Unexpected. I mean, I had no idea that it was coming.
So we can see it's working. We also see our output levels, and we know we're still in a good spot with our dialogue. Now, there are some track level effects that I do want to mention. You can access them in the Edit tab or right here in Fairlight. But let me go ahead and load those up. If you don't see them here in Fairlight, you may need to click on these three dots, come down to Visible Track Effects, and make sure these guys are turned on here. If you have the free version, you're going to see the dialogue leveler and the ducker. You're not going to see voice isolation, the music remixer, or I can't remember the dialogue separator or not. My bad. But you probably don't need that anyway. But if you want to use the dialogue leveler, that's going to help balance your audio levels for you too. So you can just click it and turn it on, and then these little icons there, you can open it up, and then you've got the settings right there, and you could just select one of the presets right here and just be good to go. You don't even have to play with your audio levels. And this also helps reduce the background noise a little bit. It can lift soft dialogue and it can reduce loud dialogue a little bit. So it does affect the dynamics a little bit, but you can go in there and if you just wanted to apply one thing, try the dialogue leveler and that should work out pretty good for you. Now, depending on how much room you have on your screen, you may see more of these things, you may not. But if you can't see something like this next tool right here, which is voice isolation, is going to be the best background noise reduction tool that's out there, even out of third-party plugins, I would say. It's built right in here in the Resolve. It's only in Studio, so if you need this, 100% worth it to buy Studio. But if I go ahead and select my track, and then I open up my inspector, I'm going to have voice isolation right here. And you should see all of these things right here in your mixer. Because I have my screen small here, I can't see all of them, but you can always see them right here in your inspector as well. So voice isolation, you turn that on and you could use the slider right here or just pop out the little effects window right here like this. And basically you're just going to dial this up, and 9 times out of 10, you don't even need 100%, but it does a great job of isolating a voice and getting rid of all the background noise or just making the background noise a little bit quieter, right? So let's take a clip here. If I just come over to, let's say this clip, actually I need to select this clip and let's hear what it sounds like. See if we could turn on a little voice isolation for this.
A bit, and I was surprised when that storm came in. The wind was blowing like crazy.
So I hear a little bit of background noise, not too bad, but just to show you as an example, if I click on the clip, turn on voice isolation, I'll pop out the window. I don't need 100% probably, but let me start at 0 and I'll just dial it up as we listen.
My car, I was just up the street here a little bit, and I was surprised when that storm came in. The wind was blowing like crazy. I thought it was going to push my car backwards. That's how hard that wind was blowing it.
So hopefully you could hear that. It really does a fantastic job of cutting out all your background noise. I played music with me talking and then completely removed the music in the background using this tool. It's really probably the best. So if you need background noise reduction in any of your videos, voice isolation is the way to go, but you need Studio to be able to use it. So now that we've got our dialogue squared away, let's add in some music. Now you can do this in the Edit tab or you can do it in Fairlight right here. Since we're in Fairlight, I'm going to use it right here. One bonus tip here for you, a little pro tip, to get rid of your in and out points, use Option or Alt X, and that's going to get rid of your in and out points in any tab that you're in. So whether you're in the Edit tab or here, it doesn't matter. So I've already got my music. I dropped it in here, and let's hear what it sounds like all together.
Yeah, so I remember it like it was yesterday. It was September 8th, 2023, around 3:30 in the afternoon.
All right, so we can hear it. It's a little bit loud. A couple things that I like to do to help my music blend with my dialogue. One, set your levels in a good spot. So when it comes to music, when you bring it into Resolve, it's probably going to be too loud. So you're going to have to lower that back. I like to aim for minus 10 dB when there's no dialogue on top of it. I think that's a good listening level. And then if there is dialogue on top of it, usually I'm bringing down that music to somewhere around minus 20 to minus 30 dB. Although it depends on the song, because this song is not that loud in the beginning. And you can see I dropped it down to minus 8.4 dB. But a few things, a few pro tips here that I like to do to my music track is I like to come to my track and I like to add a little EQ. So I'm going to turn on my EQ here and I make a cut in this range between 1 and 2K. Now, the reason I do that is because it just carves out some space for your dialogue to live and have the music kind of float around it, right, when the person is speaking. So let me just turn this on and off and you can hear the difference here.
Yeah, so I remember it like it was yesterday. It was September 8th, 2023, around 3:30 in the afternoon. I was just sitting there waiting at the bus stop like I do every day. And this store...
Okay, so it helps just carve out a little space there. So that's one thing I like to do with my music tracks when they're underneath dialogue. Closing out our EQ, I also like to add on an effect. It's called the stereo with effect. And what this does is it helps push the music out to the sides of the speakers to allow the dialogue to come straight down the middle, right? We got to kind of think spatially a little bit when we work with audio sometimes. So to find this effect, you can click on the plus. This is a built-in effect. Come down to spatial, Fairlight effects, and you should have stereo with right here. Now it's going to add that on there, and then you're going to get this. All you have to do is hit max separation on the presets. Boom, you're good to go, and you're done. And this just helps spread out that music to kind of push it out to the sides.
And it came barreling in fast and just really unexpected. I mean,
now, depending on the song, sometimes this works better than others, but you've got the option there to do it. The next thing that you might want to use is something called the Ducker, and this is new in Resolve 19. There's a few different ways you can use the Ducker, but the easiest Ducker to use is built right into the inspector. So to use the Ducker, I would select my track, I would come up to my inspector, and this will work in the Edit tab or in Fairlight. Either place, it's going to look the same. And if I select my track, but I still don't see it over here, these two little icons right up here are going to allow you to toggle back and forth between the clip itself and the actual track. And you need to be on the track itself for the Ducker to work. So sneaky little thing there. It's hard to tell what those are, but this is putting something on a track. So make sure you got your track selected. Then you've got the Ducker. We're going to go ahead and turn that on. I'm also going to open up our advanced menu here. So what we need to do with the Ducker is say, okay, what track do we want the music to listen to so it knows to duck under and get quieter underneath that track? So I'm going to click on source one, and in this case, it's the Studio MKE 600. Now, I do have multiple tracks with multiple dialogue in it, so I can actually select all those tracks so that this music will react to all of those tracks. All I have to do is click on the plus, and then just go ahead and select each one of your tracks that you want the music to respond to. So there we go. I've got 4 different tracks with dialogue that this music track will now respond to and make the music quieter as I'm speaking. Next, we've got the duck level. So how much do you want that music to get quieter when the dialogue kicks in? So I can just crank this all the way up and see how it starts out, and we can make changes as we go.
Yeah, so I remember it like it was yesterday. It was September 8th, 2023, around 3:30 in the afternoon. I was just sitting there waiting at the bus stop like I do every day. And
so you notice it's a little choppy there, right? It's working, but it's a little choppy. So if we come under advanced, what we'd want to do to fix that is just bring up our look ahead a little bit. Now this is all in milliseconds. We want to increase our hold to maybe 500 milliseconds, which is half a second. And you can always adjust this longer if you want. The rise time, how quickly do we want it to duck down? May want to adjust that. Recovery, how quick do we want it to come back up? So let's see if that helped out our sound here without it cutting out as much.
Waiting at the bus stop like I do every day. And this storm just came in, and it came barreling in fast and just really unexpected. I mean, I had no idea that it was coming.
So we can hear the music went back up when I stopped talking, and the ducker is super fast and easy to help that audio music duck underneath your dialogue or really anything else if you wanted to. And just because I'm an audio nerd here, I'm going to show you one other way that you can do the ducker, and it's using the sidechain to do ducking. So sometimes the ducker isn't getting the job done for you and you're just not happy with the results. So what I can do is turn that off, and if I open up my dynamics, in the dynamics here, I can use the compressor to do the automatic ducking for me. So if I turn on my dynamics, I can tell the sidechain of the compressor, and this is a little more advanced, but I'm just throwing it in there for you just so you guys can see what's possible. I'm an audio nerd. But use your sidechain, you can turn it on, and then we can select the channel that we want this to react to. So in my case, I'm going to say my MKE 600, and it's going to essentially do the same thing.
Around 3:30 in the afternoon, I was just sitting there waiting at the bus stop like I do every day, and
does the same thing as the ducker, but this gives you some more options and control over how to work with it, and in some cases, this is going to work better for you. But for a basic ducking, you want to use that ducker in the inspector there, in the edit tab. You don't even have to jump into Fairlight to use it. It's going to make a big difference and make it really quick and easy. You don't have to keyframe your audio or nothing like that. Drop it down, make it quieter when you need it, and then make it louder when you want it to come back up. So in a nutshell, that is some very, very quick overviews on audio editing and some of the tools that I would use to help make your dialogue sound better. And remember, audio is super important when it comes to your videos, because if it sounds like junk, nobody's going to want to watch it. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but nobody's going to want to watch it. So that is audio. If you want to know more, I've got videos on all this stuff on my YouTube channel. You can search around and find those, or you can purchase my course where it's one-stop shop. I teach you everything, the ins and outs of all the audio stuff here in Fairlight, and really just give you everything you need to know to make your audio awesome. So with that said, we got our audio squared away. What do you say we jump into the color page and talk a little color grading? So let's go ahead and jump over into the color tab where we can work with the colors of our video a little bit. So color tab is the wheel down at the bottom of the screen here. Let's go ahead and click on that. Now in the color tab, let me give you a quick lay of the land of what we've got going on in our panel here. Now with all these panels, a lot of it looks confusing, but take it step by step, learn one thing at a time, and eventually you're going to understand what's going on and where the different tools and things are. So up along the top here, we've got our gallery, which is where we can save stills and things, and power grades, which is basically like a preset that you can use in multiple projects. We've got our LUTs right here. We've got the media pool. We have our clips right here, which is going to show us essentially the clips in our timeline. In the middle here, we've got our viewer. We've got a quick export. We've got the timeline in case you want to see it, or maybe you don't want to see it. That's up to you. You've got your nodes right here, which is how we apply color grades or color grading and changes to our video clips. We have the various effects we can use, and then you've got Lightbox that allows you to see all of your clips. Moving down here, we've got our viewer, we've got our node area right here, our node tree area as they call it. You've got your clips right here, you've got your timeline down here, and then at the bottom is where we have the majority of our color tools. So each one of these icons right here is going to give you a different set of tools. Now there is a ton of stuff in here. I'm just going to cover some quick basics for you, just to give you an idea of what's going on. Essentially, what we want to start with is our basic primary color wheels right here. And that's going to be this icon right there. Now, some of the other icons here you may be familiar with. We have things like noise reduction here, which I think is only in Studio, or maybe most of them are in Studio. I have to brush up on that. You've got your curves right here. You've got your different color slice tools and color warpers and all kinds of fun stuff. If you want to make masks on your video clips, the window right here, that's where you're going to do it. Use these tools. We've got trackers in here. We can sharpen and blur things. A lot of stuff going on in here. But let's just talk about basics of some standard things you might want to do and start working with when it comes to color grading your videos. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on my first clip here in my timeline. And the way we apply different color grading adjustments, if you will, to our clip is through nodes. Now, if you've never seen nodes before, it's kind of similar to layers, but it's like this little node thing here, right? And we can add nodes by using Option or Alt S, and we can make different changes in these nodes as we want to. Now, typically, you're going to want to maybe make like one type of change in a node as opposed to doing everything all in one node, because what if you want to turn it on and off, right? You could always click on the little number there. It's going to turn it on and off. But if you want to help yourself remember what the different nodes are, you can always right click and then label the node. So I don't know, we could call this, I don't know, the basic adjustments. If you want, you can name them whatever you want. Maybe you want to do a vignette on this one and maybe some sharpening on this one. But you can add in different kinds of nodes. For now, this is just the basic serial node. If you were to right click on any one of the nodes, you can say add node, and serial node is what we are adding in currently. A lot of other options with stuff here, which I'm not going to jump into because I just want to show you basically how to work with the clips here. So what I want to do in this case is select my first node here, and I want to start to make some adjustments. Now, down in this color wheels, the primary color wheels panel is where I'd like to get started. And let's say I wanted to work with some white balance first, right? Or maybe I even need, in my basic adjustment, I need a white balance one before this. But you can come into your primary color wheels here, and with this little eyedropper, I can click on that. And now I can find something that is white or gray in my image here that I could just click on. So in my shirt here, that is gray. So let's try that and see how that works out for some white balance. All right, that looks pretty good. So it did change our temperature right here and our tint just a little bit. I think I'm okay with that. Now, one of the tools that I like to use that helps me decide like how bright should I make my image and that kind of stuff so that when I render it out, it looks good is the parade. So if I come over to this icon right here, it's going to bring up my parade. Now it is a little small here, and depending on your screen size, you may see 3 different items here, or you may only see 2. So if I were to shrink this down, you can see now I only see 2 there because it just dynamically changes based on the resolution of your screen. So if I come back and make my window the right size there, we can always pop out these if we want to. So I can click on this little icon, and it's going to pop out all these different things here for me. So I'm going to pop them back in, and I'm just going to mainly start by looking at our colors right here. So I'm happy with the white balance for this particular image, and I want to make it a little bit brighter because what I like to do is make my face about up to that 896 line right there. So when we're looking at our primary wheels, we have our lift, gamma, and gain, as well as our offset. So our offset is like brightening the whole image. So you can see it takes everything in our parade there and brings them up and down. If I want to reset it, I can click reset. If we want to use our gain, that works with just the brighter areas of our image. And you can see it just pushes up the brighter areas of our image, both in the viewer as well as in our scopes. So I'm going to reset that. The gamma works with our midtones, right? We can adjust our midtones. And the lift works with our shadows, right? We want to make sure we've got good black points, good dark points. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Lift is the darker shadow points or the darker areas of our image. Gamma is the midtones. Gain is the high points or the brighter points. And then offset kind of works with the overall exposure of the image. So taking a look at this one, let's just say I want to dial this up just a little bit. I'm going to bring everything up a little bit. And then I'm going to come to my highlights or my brighter parts of the image, and I'm going to bring that up so that my head is around that 896. Now this is like looking across the image here, right, through our different colors. So it's like looking across, so I know my head is right there. So a frame is basically like here for each one of our colors. So I think that looks pretty good. And then for the darker areas, I want to make sure I've got at least something touching the black down there. So 0 is 100% black and 1023 here is 100% white. So I don't have anything that's 100% white in this image. But if you did, you could just make sure that that's like just touching that line up in there. Now, the other tools that I will primarily use in my primaries wheel here is a little contrast. So I'm going to go ahead and add some contrast in there. And you can see on my parade there that what the contrast is actually doing. And you can double click any of these two to reset them. So I'm just going to add in a little bit of contrast. If you adjust your pivot, that's going to adjust where the contrast is happening. And then maybe if you wanted to boost up your shadows a little bit, you could make them a little bit brighter. And if you had highlights that were too bright, you could bring those down just a little bit. So those are the primary tools that I'm going to use, right? I'm going to use the contrast, the pivot, the lift, gamma, and gain, as well as the offset, shadows, highlights, and if you wanted to add in a little extra color, you could throw a little color boost in there, right? You don't want to go too crazy because it gets to be too much quick, but you could just reset that like that. Now, this footage that I have here is shot in an older Canon log format, but if you're shooting in a log format, you can use a color space transform or work with color management here in DaVinci Resolve. Again, a little more advanced than I'm going to get to in this video. So it depends on your kind of clip. Now, if you're just using like a Rec 709 clip, for example, this clip right here is a Rec 709 clip that comes out of my 5D Mark IV, then you could just go ahead and edit right on this and it should be fine. So same thing we're going to do is I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to add a few nodes here. On the first node, let's adjust our white balance. I'm going to hit that gray on my shirt, zoom in a little bit, get that gray. And now one thing that we notice if we look at our parade over here is that my head is already kind of up, above that 896. So I might want to actually just use the highlights to bring that down a little bit. But then it does seem a little dark, so I think I'm going to grab my midtones and bring those up a little. And it's kind of a balance. You're just going back and forth here to try and get, your levels and scopes in a good spot, as well as get the look that you want for your particular video. So I may add in a little extra black, and you just kind of balance it out a little bit there. Looks pretty good, maybe just a little bit of contrast. And I think this is probably pretty good. So let's say I have these, kind of squared away. And let's say on this one, now it's looking a little too bright here. I have to come back and redo this. Maybe I hit something on accident here. Let's say I wanted to add in a little more of a vignette around my image here. So I'm going to click on the next node. And in here, I want to make my vignette. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this icon right here, which is going to bring up our windows. And then I want a circle for the vignette. And now I can come up on screen, just drag it out, make it the size I want, grab this little red icon, feather it some more. And maybe I want the inside to be a little bit bigger there, kind of like that. And then I'm going to have to click on this icon here, and that just affects which way the mask is working. Right now, the mask is on the inside of the circle, and I want the mask on the outside of the circle. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. Now, I've got the mask there, but I need to make a change. And when we look in our little, node up here, you can see what's happening and what's being affected. So the gray area is not being affected. Everything around it is. So in order to make the change, I like to do it this way, but there's a lot of different ways to do it. I just come into my curves and I drop it down like that. And you can adjust it however much you want. It's up to you. Usually I just pull it down a little bit. And if you want to see a little before and after, click on the number of the node here and you can see it turn on and off. And same with my node number 1, you can turn it on and off and make the adjustments as you want. Now in the third node, a lot of times I'm going to do a little bit of sharpening, and here's how I like to sharpen the images. I'll come to the blur tab right here, and under radius, I like to come over here and I just scroll down once on my mouse wheel. So if I were to zoom in on this image right here, just to see what this is doing, if I drag this way down, you can see it sharpens it up quite a bit, right? It looks horrible. And if I go way up, it makes it blurry. So what I like to do is just from the default settings, scroll it down once, and that's it. I'm done. Some really basic sharpening, nothing too fancy. Now, if you have other types of clips, you got more going on, you may need to do, more work than this, but these are the overall big adjustments that I would do to these two clips. Now, let's say I've already done it and I have multiple clips from the same camera, right? Multiple clips in my timeline that all come from the same overall clip. We can easily copy and paste settings from one clip to another. And to do that, all I would do is just select your clip and then come back to the clip you want to paste the color grade from and middle click your mouse wheel. And boom, it's going to copy and paste everything from the one clip over to the next clip. Now, if you don't have a mouse, no middle mouse wheel, you can also right click on top instead of clicking your middle mouse wheel and come down to either apply grade, which will do the exact same thing, or append grade, which will add on that color grade to the end of whatever's on the clip that you're pasting it to. So you can do either way that works for you. Now let's take a look at another B-roll clip here just to try a little color grade on it here. I've got a picture of the sky and it just kind of pans around. So we may have some highlights there that are a little too bright, and that's perfectly fine. But on a clip like this, I might add in 2 nodes by holding Option or Alt S, add in some nodes, and I might just leave the temperature. Maybe I can warm it up a little bit. Do this one manually. I'm going to make the bright parts actually seem pretty good, I think. But maybe I want to add in a little bit of the dark areas, because if I look at my scopes here, I'm not even touching the black, right? I have no true black in there, which may be accurate, but may not. So I'm going to bring that down just a little bit on my lift, and then I'm going to add in some contrast. And let's go like that. And I can adjust my pivot a little bit, bring down the darker areas, maybe drop back the highlights a little bit, add in a little bit of either color boost, or I could use saturation in this point. So So let me turn off my timeline here so we can get a little bit bigger picture here. Let's see what this is looking like. If I do a little before and after, you can kind of see it just helped thicken up the color a little bit there. So that's not bad. I think that looks pretty good. And if we wanted to try copying the color grade from this clip onto other clips, I could just select another clip, middle mouse click. Okay, not too bad. Now I may need to make some adjustments. Maybe that doesn't work great for this particular clip. Maybe I need to be a little brighter, bring up the darks a little bit, midtones a little more. You know, you can adjust the grade however you might want to. If you want to see a complete before and after, you can click on this little icon right here, and it's going to bypass all of your color grades, and you can see what it looks like without any of your color grade nodes, and that way you don't have to turn each one individually on and off. So once you go through and you color grade all your clips, I'm just going to jump over to my final edited timeline. You can see what all of these clips look like. Now, in this case, I did the color grade inside of the multicam clip, but if I click on my other clips here, you can see the grading that I did. Coming over to these clips here, we made some changes and just color graded them in a way that I thought would work out pretty well. So let's jump back into the Edit tab, and there's a few more things that I want to mention that you might be wondering how you do. Let's talk about adding some text to your videos, right? You're probably going to want to throw some text in there, and Resolve has a lot of great preset text styles and things that you can use. So in the Edit tab right here, we're back into the Edit tab. I'm going to come over to the Effects library, and I'm going to come down to Titles. Now in the titles here, there's all kinds of different preset things that you can do and edit and work with. Some of them are animated, some of them are not. All of them can be animated if you want to. You've got all kinds of different things in here, and it's fairly easy to use any of them. You're basically just going to drag and drop it into your timeline. So let's find one that we want to use here. Let's go with this 3-line drop. I'm just going to click, hold, and drag it over into my timeline, drop it on a track. And now over here, I can select the clip, and now we can go through and make any changes that we want using our inspector. So if I select the clip, I'm going to go ahead and open up the inspector, and we've got the title right here. Make sure you're on the video section. Title, and then in here, we can add in whatever we want. So let's say we're going to change this to be a mini documentary. I'm going to change the title to The Storm, and I'm going to put by Jason Yudlowski. Now we can change the font if we want by coming to any one of these options, changing the font. You've got other options like changing the size and the color. You can add motion blur to the animation if you want to. A lot of options, and all the different kinds of text have these kinds of options to them. And even the basic text, if you scroll up to the top, you've got your text and text plus. Those are your basic texts that you can use for different things. For example, your text plus. Over here, you can, again, change the font if you want. Let's pick something like that. You can change the color, the size, the tracking. You've got a ton of options here with all the different texts. And one of the cool things with a text plus piece of text like this one is that you can click along these different tabs here, and there's other options of things you can change. For example, with shading, as you click through these different elements, I can say I want a red outline. Boom, red outline. And you can adjust all these settings. It's a lot to dive into. You just play around with it, and you're going to find some really cool stuff in there. So back to our main title text here. Maybe we want to move it and put in a different location. I can come to my settings portion of the inspector here and change settings in the transform section here. Or, like we talked about earlier, I can come to the bottom left of the window here, click on my transform, and now I can just move that text wherever I want to. So I like to do it like this. I think it's a little bit easier. Now, some pieces of text may have like built-in drop shadows and things like that. This one doesn't, so we can add in a drop shadow to our text if we want. To find that drop shadow, we can, again, come to our effects library, open effects, and you can search for it right here or just scroll down, and you are going to find under the Resolve FX style, drop shadow, and just click, hold, and drag, drop it onto your clip. Again, if I select the clip, we've got our effects. I can change the drop shadow strength. I'm going to make it stronger. I can reduce the blur, reduce the distance that it's offsetting from our text a little bit. And we have a quick and easy drop shadow. So if we play through it, here's how that text works. Turn this off. We're just going to make our viewer a little bit bigger here.
Yeah, so I remember it like it was yesterday. It was September 8th, 2023, around 3:30.
And there we go. We have a piece of text in our timeline for our video. Quick and easy. Now, if you wanted to add in some other cool things here in Resolve, there is a lot of stuff that you can do. You've got tons of open effects, as well as other cool effects here like binoculars, Let me see if I get a spot here. If you hover over them, you're going to see the different options of what the effect is going to do. Colored border, digital glitches, drone overlays. I mean, there is just so much stuff in here built in. You just got to get in there, play around with it, try it out, and see what you want to use in your particular video. But tons of great stuff built right into Resolve here. And even under the generators tab, there's a lot of great generators here. You've got clouds and cosmic speed lines, all kinds of stuff. And there's options aplenty in all of these different things that you can go ahead and change things, use different things. I mean, there's so much in Resolve. There's just not enough time in like 3 weeks to get into it all. But one more thing I want to show you here in the effects section here is the adjustment clip. So I'm just going to click, hold, and drag that down into my timeline. So an adjustment clip allows you to make changes to that adjustment clip, and it will apply those changes to everything below it in the timeline. So for example, on the adjustment clip, I can add a color grade, I can transform it. And when I do this, I'm not actually changing the clip below it. I'm actually just changing the adjustment clip. So if I were to disable the adjustment clip here by pressing D, you can see my actual clip below it is not getting affected at all. But if I turn it back on, then you can see it's getting affected by the adjustment clip. And you can do all kinds of stuff. You can add effects on your adjustment clips. You can do different things in your inspector. A lot of things you can do with an adjustment clip. Now, what's the benefit to using an adjustment clip? Well, one, you could just make the settings on there once, drag it out, and then it's going to apply it to everything that's underneath it. So you don't have to make those changes multiple times or copy and paste. Attributes, you don't have to do that. You can just stretch out your adjustment clip. So that makes it really quick and easy. You can also animate and do keyframes on adjustment clips. Really handy tool here. The only downside is that everything below the adjustment clip in the timeline is affected. So you may need to, add extra tracks in there, separate things a little bit if you want an adjustment layer to only select or only effect certain things. So I'm hoping that that's something that gets changed in the future here for DaVinci Resolve, is that the adjustment clip will affect, only the thing directly below it, kind of like a Photoshop thing. So I don't know. Hopefully Blackmagic will implement something like that in the future. And then again, fusion compositions here. If you wanted to get into making visual effects and motion graphics and things like that, you can use a fusion effect right here. You can also just jump into fusion with any clip that you might want. A lot of different things that you can do there. Fusion is there's so much going on. Actually, every single tab, there's so much going on in all these. And I'm really just trying to give you a high-level overview of how to just kind of work through some of these things and use some of the basic tools in each tab here. Now that we covered some of these kind of effects and things you might want to add into your video, again, high-level overview. This stuff goes very deep. And let me just show you what Fusion looks like and just kind of give you a real quick overview of things you can do in there. So I'm just going to come to the end of my timeline here. And I'm going to drop in a Fusion clip. Actually, I'm going to go back to my my timeline I was working on here. I'm going to drop in a Fusion composition, drop that down there. And what I want to do is put my playhead over top of it. And I'm going to go ahead and jump over into Fusion, which is the little magical wand here at the bottom of the screen. So this is the Fusion tab. And right now, all we have is a media out. And Fusion allows you basically to build things from scratch. You can start with a video clip. You can use templates. There's things you can just open and then start to edit with. But quick overview of Fusion here. You've got your media pool. You've got the effects library with all the different tools you can use here in Fusion. There's a ton of them. You can show your clips if you want to. You've got your node area, which again is how we build out things here in Fusion. It works with nodes, which sounds scary, but it's really not as bad as you might think. We can work with splines to work with animations. We've got keyframes, we've got metadata, and our inspector, again, which shows up in most of our tabs. And then we've got all kinds of different tools down here. Some of the basic ones that you're going to use on a regular basis are right here. But you could add in anything you want. There's just so much you can do here. And Casey Ferris has great videos on Fusion, getting started. His Zero to Hero Fusion course is great. A lot of stuff that you can do. But just to show you something basic we could do here, let's say we want to make some kind of custom text or something. I can add in a background. Now, in order to show these different nodes in my viewers here so I can see what I'm doing, you could select your node and use either the number 1 or the number 2. Number 1 puts it on this side. Number 2 puts it on this side. So I'm going to put my background here. Let's say I want to change the color. So in my inspector here, I can change it whatever color you want. Let's say we're going to do that. go with YouTube Red, and then I want to add in some text, and I can click on that. And now I need a way to kind of put these two together. So I need a merge node. And if we take a look in our toolbar up here, we've got a merge node. I can click on that. And because I had text selected, it automatically hooks them up. And basically, it's kind of like drawing a little graph here, right? Each node here has different inputs and outputs on it. So with this right here, we've got a mask input. So the blue ones are always a mask input. The green ones are a foreground input. And the yellow ones are a background input. So in this case, I want my background node here to go into the background of the merge node, and I want the text to appear on top. So I'm going to put the text in the foreground. In the text node, let's just type in a little something. Let's call it YouTube. And now I can't see it, so I'm not really sure what I'm doing. But if I click on my text and I press number 2, well, there it is. I can see my text now. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And if I want to see what it looks like overlaid, I could click on the merge node and press number 2. Or what I actually need to do too is look at the media out. So this is what's going to get output from Fusion and will show back up in my edit tab in my project. So I'm just going to take my merge node, grab the output, and connect it there. So now I can take my media out, press number 2, and now this is the media out that I see. So let's say I like this, but I want the background to kind of be closer to the text itself. A lot of different ways that you can do it, but just as an example, to create a mask here, I would select my background node, and I can add in a rectangle mask. And now you see I've got a rectangle around my YouTube text. So I could adjust it using my inspector, or I can even come in either viewer here and just click, hold, and drag, make an adjustment. Maybe I want the corner radius to be a little bit more round so it looks like a button. There we go. Make a little YouTube button. You can also invert it if you want to. It doesn't have to be a solid. It could just be a outline if I wanted to. You could increase the border width. I mean, there's just endless possibilities of things you could do here in Fusion. This is just a quick example of something you could make. But Fusion takes a little while to get a grasp of. I still don't have a great grasp of it. I can make some basic things, but when it comes to cool animations and stuff, I'm looking to Casey and a lot of the other YouTubers out there to figure out how to do really cool things. But a lot of stuff here in Fusion that you could do. And if you want to see some of the really cool stuff that you could do that's built into Resolve here, I'm just going to go ahead and delete all these. I can select them all and hit delete. If I come up here and open up my effects, I'm going to come to templates and then come to Fusion. And in here, there are some different things that are already pre-made for me that I could take a look at. And if you even open up the Fusion menu there's different kinds of motion graphics. There's a scroll bar, there's radar. So all I have to do is drag and drop it down here, connect the last node to the output, and now it's got this. So when I play through it, that's what we see, right? And you can poke through these nodes and stuff and see how it works. If you use your Command or Control key, we can zoom in and out. Fusion is just like a whole animal on its own. Actually, all these tabs are. But if you just want to like try something out pretty cool, really quick and easy, there's different kinds of text. If I Control Z or Command Z to do that, I drop in, let's say, color swap. Connect that up. You can see it changes the color. We can edit it. There's just, Fusion is, like I said, there's so much there. So much. So I'm just going to leave Fusion at that and let you guys get in there and dig around, and just takes playing with it, watching videos from some of our other favorite YouTubers out there, and slowly, little by little, you'll start to get the hang of Fusion there for you. So jumping back into the Edit tab, let me go ahead and just open up my final timeline here. And I want to talk about rendering out our project, right? We've looked at how to do basic edits. We've looked at how to work with our audio, our color a little bit. Now it's time to figure out, well, how do we get this out of DaVinci Resolve? We're happy with it. It looks good. Now I want to render it out. So we're going to do that by going over to the Dliver tab, which is the last tab. Looks like a rocket ship down at the bottom here. So go ahead and click on Dliver. Now in the Dliver tab, there's a bunch going on here, but it's not too bad. Let's take a high level look at the window here. So we've got our render settings right here, and this is where we're going to set how we want the video to render out. Tape, you don't have to worry about. Clips, you can see them or not. We've got our viewer right here just to see what's going on. Our render queue right here. So once we set up our job to render, it's going to save that render or the settings we want to use to render it out right in the queue here. And then down here, we've got our timeline that we can see what's going on and what we can render. Now, you can render the entire timeline, or if you want to render an in and out range, you can also do that. So taking a look at the render settings, this is where we're going to set up our project to render out of DaVinci Resolve. So there are a bunch of presets in here. You can see, well, custom exports, you set up however you want. You've got H.264 master. You've got Hyperdeck, H.265. ProRes, you've got a YouTube preset, Vimeo, TikTok. Presentations is for Blackmagic Cloud. You can render to Dropbox or Replay. To Final Cut Pro, you can do an IMF generic. A Premiere Pro, audio only, Avid, Pro Tools. You can do a lot of different things here. Typically, I have a custom setting set up, but if you're just getting started and you're working on a video for YouTube or something, you can try the YouTube one here. It should work out okay for you, 1080 or 2160, depends on what you want to do. You could try that, but let's just set up some custom settings and I'll show you what I would typically use for a 1080 video that I'm rendering out of DaVinci Resolve here. So I'm going to go to Custom Export. First, I'm going to choose a file location. So click on Browse and go select a file location to save the file. So when I selected the location, I also gave it a name. Under Render, we're going to do a single clip because I want one long video clip, but you do have the option to render out individual clips if that's something you want to do. Now under the video section here, we have Export Video. Format, I'm going to typically go with an MP4. Codec, you can use H.264 or H.265. So let's go with 265. I'm going to leave these two options checked. Resolution, in this case, I'm just going to do a 1920 by 1080, but a lot of times when I edit a 1080 timeline, I'm going to select this and I'm going to go ahead and change to use a 4K timeline to export it out. But in this case, we're going to use a 1920 by 1080. Frame rate, use the same frame rate as your timeline. If you have chapter markers in your video for something like YouTube, you can export those out if you wanted to. For quality, you can use automatic, but for me, what I like to do is select restrict to, and I'm going to choose 40,000 right here. You can optimize for speed. Encoding profile, you can probably leave that as it is. That should be fine. You can do a multipass encode, and most of the time I do, unless I need to render something out quicker because a multipass takes longer. I don't notice really much of a difference in the quality, but a lot of times I'll just use a multipass encoder right there. Keyframes, you can leave that as it is. And then you've got other settings here under advanced. Generally, I'm not going to change any of those. For subtitle settings, if you have subtitles, you can export those out, which we didn't talk about how to create them, but it is quick and easy. You can make them right here in Resolve. And then if you're going to upload directly to YouTube, you've got some settings here that you can choose when you're uploading directly to YouTube. Now, taking a quick look at the audio section here for codec, I'm typically going to use AAC. And I go with a constant bit rate of 320. And then your output track is typically going to be your bus 1, which is your main audio output from DaVinci Resolve. That should all be set up by default. You shouldn't have to change anything. It should be good to go. Under audio normalization, if you're uploading to something like YouTube and you didn't check the overall loudness by yourself or manually, you could normalize the audio at the end of your whole audio process. Come down to standard here and change this to YouTube. And then it should automatically set that optimization for you and the normalization for YouTube. But for me, I'm pretty much always doing that, manually before I'm done with my video. So I don't use this option, but it's there if you need it and you don't know too much about how to set the loudness for your videos. Although I've got videos on that and it's not too hard once you get the hang of it. But that option is there if you want to use it. And then file, there's just some things in there that you can change and take a look at if you're interested. Once you've got all your settings set up, go ahead and click Add to Render Queue. Now in the render queue, it's going to be right here. It's going to save all those settings in there for you. If you decide you ever want to make changes, you can click on the little pencil icon and it'll let you make changes back over here. You would then click Update Job and now you're good to go. So when you're ready to render, just make sure you've got your job selected because you can have multiple jobs here. And you can select multiple jobs at once as well if you want to. And then just go ahead and hit this button to hit Render All. And then Resolve is going to go ahead and render out your project and put that file wherever it is that you want it to go. So congratulations, you just rendered out your first project here in DaVinci Resolve. How'd it work out? Let me know. I want to know comments down below. Were you able to make it through your project? What are your questions? I'm happy to answer your questions. And before I wrap up this video, I want to jump into project settings as well as preferences real quick. Just go over them and just share some insights of things that you might want to set and change just to help make working in Resolve a little bit easier. So let's check those out. And then I'm going to wrap this up. You guys are going to be on your way and you've got a whole huge class here with tons of great information to help you edit and learn DaVinci Resolve. So jumping back into the Edit tab here, let's take a look at DaVinci Resolve preferences really quickly. To get to your preferences, open DaVinci Resolve at the top left, come down to Preferences. Now in our Preferences window, we have System Preferences and User Preferences. System Preferences will apply to everyone, and User applies to just the user of that particular session of Resolve. So if you log into your computer as different users, you can change those user settings. So let's just start at the top. Memory and GPU, you want to max that out, right? You want to use as much memory and GPU as you have. The more you have, the better. Media storage, if you want a specific location for things like your cache files and things like that, you can add that in right here. Decode options, you don't even have to worry about that. Video and audio in and out. If you are having problems and you can't hear your audio, right here, output device, that's what you're going to want to change and take a look at. A lot of times people can't get audio out of Resolve, and it's because Resolve sometimes automatically switches to a different audio output when you open the program. So check output device, and that's where you want to set your output device so you can hear all of the audio coming out of Resolve. Typically, you're going to leave automatic speaker configuration checked. I have it unchecked only because I'm screen recording, and this is how I screen record my audio from DaVinci Resolve. If you're trying to record into DaVinci Resolve, you can do voiceovers and all that kind of stuff. Input device right there is where you're going to want to set that. Video plugins, if you have any, you can enable them right here. Audio plugins, you can point to where you have those. I have a ton of Waves plugins. I just gave away a free Waves plugin. Sorry if you missed it. But you can add those and enable those right here. Control panels, if you have any of those, you can enable those there. If you're on a Mac under General, you might want to use Mac Display Color Profiles for your viewers and automatically tag 709 Scene as 709A. Now, those are only if you're on a Mac. You might want to check those options. PC might be a little different. I don't work on a PC, so I'm not 100% sure on the PC side of things. You can also log into your internet accounts if you wanted to, and there's nothing in advance, so I'm not sure why it's there. Now, going under the user settings, here is where you can kind of change some things that based on your preferences of how you like to see things in Resolve here. So we've got UI settings. You can change things here. Just read through them. They're pretty much going to make some sense. Two that I will point out to you is this one, stop playback when a drop frame is detected, and stop renders when a frame or clip cannot be processed. Sometimes you may have like one frame or one clip that won't process and your render keeps crashing. I think by default this is checked on as well as this one. So I recommend you come in here and turn these off, because if it's one frame, the majority of the time it's not going to make a difference in your project. Nobody's going to even notice it, especially when it comes to working with like Fusion or things like that. One frame is not going to make a big deal. So I turn those off because for a long time in the beginning when I started using Resolve, the render would stop and I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. Then I turn this off, renders out fine. I never have any problems. So that's one thing you might want to look in there or look into there. Project load and save, we talked about this right in the beginning of the course here. Make sure you've got your backups turned on. You don't want to regret it by not having backups. Really, really important. Boring subject, but super important. Under the editing, you can change some things here, like where does your time code start, your default number of audio and video tracks. You want to probably show your smart bins. You can create smart bins automatically. Down here under general settings, change your general settings for how long your default transitions are and generators and stills, like when you drop in an image, how long is that by default? You can change all that stuff right here. Take a look through there, see if there's things that you want to change. In color, you can change some of these if you want. I'm going to recommend you probably go with your default settings. In Fairlight, again, some things you can change. Default settings are probably fine. Playback settings, you probably don't have to worry about that. Control panels and metadata, you don't have to worry about that. Once you get those set up, go ahead and hit save. So that's preferences in a nutshell. The important ones is those don't stop renders on playback. That's important. Make sure you check those out. Now let's jump into project settings. Now project settings are set on an individual project basis, whereas preferences will take precedent in every single project that you create inside of your database. So to open up project settings, you want to either go to File and down to Project Settings, or you click on the little gear cog icon over here, and that's going to open up your project settings. So let's run through these real quick here. Master settings. So this is going to be things like your timeline resolution. If you are editing shorts or vertical format, boom, there you go. You're going to get vertical timelines now. You check that on right there. Your playback frame rate right here, you want that to match your clips. Now, like I showed you in the beginning of this video, when you drag and drop that first clip in, it's going to automatically set some of these things for you. So keep that in mind. I would drag and drop in your clip first. It'll set it automatically for you if you're not sure where to set some of these things. Coming down, video monitoring, you probably don't need to worry about that. Optimize media and render cache. This is where you can tell Resolve how to create your optimized media or your proxy files, what format you want to use. You can select whatever you want. Default settings are probably going to be pretty good for you, but you can change those. One thing to look at is the background caching. So when we're looking at those red and blue lines above our clips, we can tell DaVinci Resolve how long to wait. Once I stop moving my mouse, how long should DaVinci Resolve wait before it starts making that stuff? And by default, it's 5 seconds. I changed that to 1 second. So as soon as I stop working, boom, Resolve, you get to work and start working on things in the background for me. So I like to change that to 1 second. You can say automatically cache transitions in user mode, automatically cache composites in user mode, cache effects in user mode. You can change those and set those however you want. Generally, I use smart. And if you're not sure what I was talking about, if you come to playback here, render cache, that's where you can change it from none, user, and smart. So that's what this section here has to do with. Your working folders, where do you want your proxy files to go if you create them? Where do you want your cache files to go? I send all this stuff to an external hard drive and let it build up there so I don't clog up the internal drive on my computer. Frame interpolation, I'm not going to talk about these too much in this video, but basically it just gives you smoother processing of your clips if you needed to. I've got videos on all that stuff, but we're not going to cover that in this video. Image scaling, you can probably stick with your default settings there, and it should be fine. Color management. If you want to work in a color managed workflow, you have the option to do that here. You can use DaVinci YRGB Color Managed. It allows you to select different things. It can do it automatically for you. If you're working in log format clips and different kinds of clips, it'll automatically figure out what color space you're in. And the color tools here are just phenomenal. The whole program's phenomenal, if I'm being honest with you. But you can also set everything manually and custom if you want. You've got tons of options here, but I would say if you want to get started with it a little bit, go with DaVinci YRGB Color Managed and try the automatic color management and see how that works out for you. Processing mode, you can do SDR or HDR depending on your footage. And the output space, you can set that typically as Rec 709 is going to be your output space. And then the rest of the stuff in the color management section here, I don't really change. General options here. You could probably stick with your default settings and that's going to be fine. Camera raw, you can set what kind of raw footage you're using. So in my case, I might choose, Canon raw, and then I can decode it using Resolve, and I can do it by the camera metadata. So a lot of different ways you can change things. Capture and playback. So if you were recording into DaVinci Resolve, this is where you can set some of those different kinds of settings. Subtitles and transcription. You can make some high-level changes to the layout and the format of those transcriptions and subtitles here. Fairlight, you can make some changes here as far as like your target loudness, your audio sample rate, and then you have path mapping here if you need to map any media locations. The main things you need to be concerned about: master settings, color management if you're ready to get into that, and capture and playback if you are recording directly into DaVinci Resolve. Once you've gone ahead and set all these, you could save them as a preset. If I click up here, you can go to default preset and say update preset. You can set current settings as a default preset. You can save as a new preset. And a lot of presets can be made here, not only with project settings, but with audio stuff, with video stuff. You can preset all kinds of great things just to speed up your workflow so you don't have to do things over and over and over again. Once you've got all your settings set, go ahead and hit save, and boom, you're good to go for your project. So that is DaVinci Resolve in a nutshell, guys. I know it was kind of like drinking from a fire hose here. I threw a lot of information at you throughout the course of this video. I hope you're able to kind of go back and poke through it and pull out the things that you need to know and use this as a reference as you work through your DaVinci Resolve projects. But just some advice, if you're just getting started in Resolve or you've been in the program for a little while, maybe you're new to video editing, take it slow. DaVinci Resolve has a very steep learning curve when you're getting started. When I started, I felt like I couldn't find information. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what questions to ask. And back then, there was a lot less information here on YouTube about the whole program. I spent a lot of time watching Casey's videos, Casey Ferris, and just kind of learning and trying to understand the program, how it works, and how to solve problems. But the best advice I can give you is start small. Start with editing a project, making cuts, and then if you run into a problem, come over to YouTube and search for it. You're going to find videos from me and from a lot of other great creators here on YouTube that are going to be able to help you through those kinds of problems, and just take it one step at a time. If you run into a roadblock, do a little research, figure out how to get past that roadblock, then keep moving. Don't try and learn everything at once because, honestly, the program is bottomless. Like, there's just an infinite amount of stuff that you can learn in this program, and it can be overwhelming. It can absolutely be overwhelming. So take it slow. Don't get, frustrated. If you have problems, search for it. There's a lot of great answers out there nowadays. And you should be able to get unstuck. If you're still stuck, leave a comment in this video and I'll do my best to point you in the right direction to help answer your questions. So thank you guys for sticking with me for this long crash course here. I hope it was helpful. Would love to hear your thoughts on it. If you want to learn all of your audio editing in one place, check out my course, Audio Essentials for Video Editors in DaVinci Resolve. It's over 4 hours of training broken down into small short videos where you can learn how to edit your audio, make it sound awesome, because if you don't have good audio, nobody's gonna watch your videos. I hate to tell you that, but nobody's gonna watch them. They're just not. So if you want to learn audio, check that out. And if you want other free files, I've got lots of free files on Shopify that you can get, from presets to footage that you can practice with and things like that. So check that out if you're interested. So big thank you for hanging with me. And if you have questions, comments, perhaps concern, leave it down below. And with that said, I gotta rest my voice because that was a lot of talking. So I will see you guys in the next video. And if you make a video, drop a link to it. I want to check it out. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Jason Yadlowski. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video. I need some water. I'm out of here. Have a great day. Enjoy some editing.